Invocation will be led by Councilmember Chip Wilson, pledged by Rick Dietz.
Heavenly Father, thank you again for this opportunity to serve our community. Guide us and our city staff during our decision-making opportunities. Help us make decisions that will continue to make this a community as safe and secure and meet the needs of our residents. Again, we are reminded that we can disagree and come up with a decision that can help everyone. This is a democracy, and this is what we represent to our community. Tonight, we also ask for your healing hands for some of our very own. Deb Dietz, stand beside both Deb and Rick as they work through the health situations they are facing. We also want to pray for Robin's 2 daughters. Please assist them as they are recovering from their health problems. Help both families through these troubling times. In addition, we again ask you a watchful eye over our military members and their families wherever they are serving. Guide them and keep them out of harm's way and protect as they are protecting our freedoms. In the Lord's name, amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Mayor Salako,
Here.
Vice Mayor Eck,
Here.
Councilmember Barker. Here. Councilmember Dietz.
Here.
Councilmember Surtee. Here. Councilmember Severs.
Here.
Councilmember Wilson.
Here.
All members present. You have a quorum, Your Honor.
I have approval on the minutes of the regular meeting of January 15th.
the consent agenda.
You need the consent.
Consent agenda?
I move that the consent agenda be accepted as presented and that approval be given for an expenditure not to exceed $30,000 to Arizona Tactical LLC for the purchase of bulletproof vests and pepper spray for newly hired police officers and replacement of expired equipment for current officers and SWAT uniforms and duty gear SWAT equipment to replace worn out and or damaged equipment for current and new equipment for recently appointed SWAT officers. And that approval be given for an expenditure not to exceed $50,000 to Universal Police Supply Company for the purchase of uniforms for new officers and replacement of worn out and or damaged uniforms for current officers. And that approval be given for an expenditure not to exceed $36,000 to East Valley Uniforms for the purchase of uniforms for new officers and replacement of worn out and or damaged uniforms of current officers. And that approval be given for an expenditure not to exceed $30,000 to CLH International Incorporated for replacement of broken or inoperable mobile data computers and accessories for department patrol vehicles. And that approval be given for an expenditure not to exceed $36,000 to Dell Marketing LP for various computer-related equipment, which includes laptop computers for the Criminal Investigations Division, replacement of obsolete computers, printers, monitors, and purchase of routers, servers, and software for the Department of Public Safety. And that approval be given for an expenditure not to exceed $50,000 to Premise One for the installation and upkeep of building network wiring, purchase and installation of equipment for the mobile command van and emergency operations center, and cabling and the maintenance of Cisco routing system. And that the award of bid for project number 2007-16, material and labor to lower and raise manholes and water valves at various locations throughout the city be awarded to Specialty Companies Group LLC on a per item basis in the amount of $100 per mobilization, $150 to lower manhole, $265 to raise manhole, $150 to lower water valves, $240 to raise water valves, $105 to install a survey monument and $250 for traffic control, and that the mayor be authorized to sign the agreement pending final approval by the city attorney, and that the receipt of the comprehensive annual financial report for the fiscal year ended June 30th, 2007 be acknowledged, and that the receipt of the branch library space needs plan for the Apache Junction Public Library be acknowledged.
Second.
Moved and second, roll call?
Councilmember Deeds?
Yes.
Councilmember Barker?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Eck?
Yes.
Councilmember Severs?
Yes.
Councilmember Sturdy?
Yes.
Councilmember Wilson?
Yes.
Mayor Anselaco?
Yes.
Unanimous, Your Honor.
Proclamation declaring February 1st of the 29, 2008 as Career and Technical Education Month. City Clerk? Oh, we're going to be here a while. Proclamation, Career and Technical Education Month, February 29, 2008. Whereas February 1st of 29, 2008 has been designated Career and Technical Education Month by the Association for Career and Technical Education, and whereas profound economic and technological changes in our society are rapidly reflected in the structure and nature of work, thereby placing new and additional responsibilities on our educational system. Whereas career and technical education provides Americans and school to careers connection and the backbone of a strong, well-educated workforce, which fosters productively in business and industry and contributes to America's leadership in the international marketplace. Career technical education gives high school students experience of practical, meaningful applications of basic skills such as reading, writing, and mathematics, and improving quality of their education, motivating potential dropouts, and giving all students leadership opportunities in the field of their communities. Whereas the ever-increasing cooperative efforts and career of technical educators, business, industry stimulate the growth and vitality of our local economy, and that the entire nation be preparing graduates for career fields, forecast to experience the largest and fastest growth in the next decade. And therefore, I, John Anselaco, Mayor of the City of Apache Junction, Arizona, do hereby proclaim February 1st to 29th of 2008 Career and Technical Education Month. And who is this for?
That's for the Pinal County Check Consortium, and they were going to be here tonight. I don't know if they are here.
They're not here?
The next one is for them as well.
Proclamation, whereas entrepreneurship is vital to the City of Apache Junction growth and prosperity, and whereas most of the new jobs created throughout the United States in the past decade have come to the creative efforts of entrepreneurs and small businessmen, and whereas according to the U.S. Department of Commerce, and more than 2,300 people have become independent entrepreneurs daily, joining more than 20 million self-employed, and that makes up more than 75% of the nation's 26 million plus business firms nationwide. And the partnership of Century 21 Skills identified the literacy skills as one of the 21st century content areas critical to the success of communities and workplaces, and whereas more than 70% of young Americans envision starting a business or doing something as adults, and the national government associations encourage connecting education to economic growth industries, recognize that entrepreneurship and small business creations are the growth engines of our economy. Whereas a broad coalition of partner organizations in Apache Junction and throughout the United States are actively engaged in enhancing opportunities throughout collaboration and cooperation with the National Consortium for Entrepreneurship Education. Oh, my mouth is dry. We're encouraging the youth to be excited in this endeavor and working to expand the knowledge, skills, and the attitudes of Apache Junction's youth and adults be successful. Entrepreneurs are crucial to the long-term growth and local communities of the state and nation. And whereas Apache Junction Career and Technical Student Organization offer an array of programs, activities, and competitive events focused on entrepreneurship, and whereas the United States House of Representatives resolved to recognize an annual National Entrepreneurship Week. This year commences on February 23rd, March 1st, 2008. Whereas the National Entrepreneurship Week provides an opportunity to focus on the innovative ways in which entrepreneurship education can bring together the core academic, technical, and problem-solving skills essential to the future and successful work of a future workplace. Now, therefore, I, John S. Sulaco, Mayor of Apache Junction, Arizona, do hereby proclaim the week of February 23rd through March 1st as Entrepreneurship Week. I here do urge the private sector and the citizens of the community participate in Leadership Week, February 23rd through March 1st. And this is also the same?
Yes, sir.
Presentation to the council, special report, and citizen video.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and member of the council. It's my pleasure to show you the council special report to the citizens of Apache Junction. It is based on your on your work plan 2007, 2008, and beyond.
That's some volume there.
No, it's
That's good.
I look good, but no talk good. Hey, that's better.
Is that me? Gosh, I've aged.
Oh,
There he comes.
Crusade Monday.
restart. Everybody's wearing red. Let's find a restart. There's a restart button. Restart.
we worked earlier today.
That's the way it is.
In June 2007, the mayor and council formally met and adopted a work plan for the year 2007 and 2008.
The work plan is a strategic plan for the city that the council, the mayor and council adopted, and we have to have short and long-term goals. And I think we do have a very comprehensive work plan.
And what we're trying to do here is find a balance between economy, community, and environment.
Since July of 2007, much has been accomplished from the mayor and council work plan, remodeling the animal control facility, adoption of a code of conduct. Here is the complete list. Key element of the mayor and council work plan for the city of Apache Junction is economic development for the community.
There are many keys to economic development in Apache Junction. We have hired an economic development director. This is a new position for the city.
We gave direction to George that we really wanted to bolster this position in this department. And we needed a director and we needed a staff.
And it's his job to formulate a plan for economic development, which he has, a plan called EDEP, which was adopted by the council several weeks ago.
One thing the council's done already in just the 7 months that I've been on board is join GPAC, the Greater Phoenix Economic Council. And what they can do is market our city worldwide, nationally and worldwide.
People aren't going to come knocking to your door unless you're out there actually pursuing. We do need to be aggressive to go out there to try to get the word out as to what we are. And through GPAC, that's one avenue that we can use.
First thing that we're doing is identifying what kinds of businesses we need in Apache Junction. So we've hired an organization called the Retail Coach.
We need the tax dollars to fund the city, to fund the police department, to fund Parks and Rec. This isn't federal money that's sent here. We have to generate that from internally.
The city maintains and lives on the sales tax.
This company will measure what specifically is legal to give us an idea of the type of businesses we want to draw to our community, the type of business who will make it here in our community. Because above all, we want business to make it here.
Revenue development is our second key area of emphasis in the Mayor and Council work plan. This includes grants and grant acquisition, as well as a new area of emphasis, which is sponsorships.
With the opportunity to receive grants, large and small, we do get a few grants from the Indian reservations, and a lot of smaller grants and the CDP funds that we receive. All these grants help us provide our infrastructure and development of downtown and the city.
Through the grants, we're able to grow and to improve our police responses and in our own community. And there's several things that grants have done for the senior citizens.
We've made some beautiful upgrades, Ironwood, on and off ramps, for one with the TEA grants is just gorgeous. And that'll be continued out through all the off ramps within the city. We've been approved for 2 other off ramps already, Oldfield and Omaha.
Well, the sponsorship will bring in money to sponsor things like Lost Veteran Days, Parks and Recreation, things that aren't in our budget.
One of the things that I have been involved with, it has been Little Buckaroos. They've gotten a sponsor from Ford that has helped out. Superstition Horsemen's Association has also been a sponsor of it for many years, which has kept the cost down for the kids.
When you get that kind of sponsorship, number one, they put money into the community. Number two, they draw people to the community. And the more people you can draw, the more business you do. So this is all part of economic development.
Development of the community is our third key area of emphasis in the Mayor and Council work plan. It includes downtown redevelopment, sustainability, development of U.S. trust land south of 60, and PM10.
Well, we have PM10 coming into effect soon, and a lot of our dirt roads have to be paved. And also, a lot of these parking lots they're up and down the trail that we've been trying to get people to pave them. They're going to be forced to pave them now.
That's when you hit this area hard. We have a tremendous number of unpaved roads, unpaved parking lots. However, the city has already worked with the owners of several parking lots to help them get it dust controlled, which is the PM10 mandate.
What we don't want to affect is our rural lifestyle. I mean, if you have a stable or a corral, we're not going to be paving our corrals. So hopefully the federal government will understand that. It's just for dust control and to take care of those problems.
The overall view for the community is going to depend a lot on what happens south of the 60 in Lost Veteran Heights.
When we talk about sustainability, if you don't have the live, work, and play, you're not going to have sustainability. People have to be there. People have to work there. People have to play there. That's what makes a community a community.
I think the same values we have throughout the community will go down. The
far as the concern about open space, the concern about balance of residential, commercial, and industrial.
You know, I am a horse person, live in the large lot area, and we moved here because this is what we want to maintain. With the huge development to the south, to including the trails, accessibility, not only for the people that want to be able to get out there and ride their horses through, but also people that want to get out there on their bikes and ride, that want to be able to walk and see the views of what we have to offer in the community. And we have a lot to offer.
You have to have that. We don't want people to have to go somewhere else to get what they need.
Most cities do have a regular downtown. With our downtown, it was more of just a bypass years ago, and so we have to actually create a downtown.
We collectively, as city leaders, need to come up with a vision. Once you've got the vision, everybody agrees on what it could look like, what it should look like, what it might look like, then it's easier to set your goal.
Now, the city does not own that land, but the city can certainly make suggestions about that land. The city will definitely have to okay what goes in there. So any changes in zoning, any changes in requests for setbacks that are different from the zone they're in, for heights, et cetera, it's going to have to go through the city.
What we can do, and I think we've taken the first steps, is redesigning and doing the upgrades to the focal point and starting a medium upgrade project will hopefully create interest.
I want people to see the center of our city and to have something spectacular there.
We can have a newer part to the south that is developed, but it's all part of our overall community. And the downtown section can be a central portion, a lively portion where all the, I'll say, activities would happen.
A lot of people think that the multi-generation center and the new city hall was something that the city fathers wanted. This is all done through a town hall. We asked the people what they want, they came.
It was fantastic. We had neighborhood association meetings. We had the town hall. We had numerous open meetings pertaining to the first capital facilities program. And that's how we came up with the things that we accomplished in the first capital facilities program, which was a great success at a very low cost to the residents of our community.
We ended up with a skate park, a swimming pool, a library. In order to do a capital facilities plan too, we definitely have to include the public. Democracy is a participatory sport.
And so we need to plan and start planning and start these meetings and get a clear view of what the residents would like to see for a second go around with our capital facilities program.
Anything like that we do that's going to dedicate public funds, it's going to ask the public to pay 0.2% on their sales tax. They need to have some kind of say in that.
The fifth area of the major comprehensive work plan is one that's critical in every community. That is public safety.
Public safety needs to be the #1 priority in this community and any community. When somebody comes to our community, whether it's to live here, look for a new home here, shop here, start a business, work at a business, no matter what it is, even just for recreation, you need to know that you're safe.
We need more police officers out on the street. We're growing, and whoever's on the street now, especially the patrol, the overtime they have to put in, these men are overworked, men and women are overworked.
We've just done amazing things with our police department. We've got the new 800 megahertz system now. We've really stepped into the 21st century as far as technology goes. We've got quality individuals, our personnel now that are becoming very qualified people.
Is to maintain a competitive position in the job market for officers. This is going to be so tough. we are, not only the city of Apache Junction, not only the state, but the nation itself is fast heading for economic crisis. It is going to be so difficult for us to maintain that high rate that we need to stay at to get the quality of people that we want in this department. So I think that's one that's going to take a lot of watching by staff to figure out how we can do what we need to do there.
Finally, the last two areas of emphasis in the mayor and council work plan include communication and relationship building with internal partners. These are the school district, fire district. Our external partners include Pinal County and Gold Canyon.
Like they say, no man is an island. We all need to be working together to make all these things that we want to do happen.
I think we already have a good partnership with a lot of the internal departments and organizations, the school district, the fire.
Internal partnerships, very, very important. What we do affects other people. Everybody needs to know that. So they get involved, they give us their input, we can listen to them, we can make more well-educated decisions. Like you had said, we've partnered with the school district on the, not only the skate park area, but also the pool. We made a major improvement on the pool the past few years on that. And this has been an activity that has helped the schools out, and it's helped us out as well.
What I would like to develop is more with our region, with Gold Canyon, Queen Valley, up in the north, where the ghost town is in the mining camp, that area.
Well, I think it's very important that we look at everybody in the community for our partnerships. You know, the business, the property owners, they're very important to us. They need to know what's happening, know what we're thinking, know what's going on, and be possibly a part of the decision process. The partnerships that we form are amazing. They're very important. The school districts, the fire district, the police department, you know, the public safety in general, whether it be the hired police or the volunteers or the auxiliary police, the volunteers for the animal control, all partnerships. Gold Canyon is a neighbor immediately to the east, and they are a neighbor. They are a good neighbor, and we need to work because if we attract people and businesses to the area, we want to include them as part of this because their growth is important just as much as ours. We need to take into account their needs, and they need to look at our needs as well. And the only way to know that is to be able to communicate on that. They are a part of this community. They may not be within our city limits, but they are definitely part of our community. What we do affects them. Our economic growth affects them. They come here to shop. They come here to visit. A lot of the people from Gold Canyon come here to work. And that's a partnership that needs to be looked at very seriously, and it needs to grow. We need to become closer and work together as one community, not two cities, but one community.
When we make decisions about the state land, for instance, we need to talk to people who know about large development, who understand community planning, village planning, and all of those other labels that we've been tossing out as possibilities for that type of development out there. Since we're going to impact all of these people, we need their thoughts and ideas, and they need to hear ours, so that we have a communication, nobody's surprised. Everybody understands what everybody's going to be doing or hopes to be doing, and hopefully we can help one another accomplish something that's really great for this community and the area.
Thank you for watching the Mayor and Council's report to citizens. We hope you've learned a lot. For more information, go to www.ajcity.net.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pat. The next item is call to the public. This is time set aside for each of our meetings for the public to address the council. If you wish to speak, you may fill out a request to speak form now and hand it to our city clerk. When called upon, please come forward to the microphone podium, state your name and address for the record. If there's a group speaking on the same subject, please choose a spokesperson. The council welcomes all your comments and suggestions. Arizona open meeting law allows individuals to address the council on any issue within the jurisdiction of the council. Council may not answer your questions or discuss your comments at this time. However, at the conclusion of call to the public, council may do any of the following: respond to criticism made by an individual who addresses the council, ask staff to review the matter, ask staff to place the matter on a future agenda. Council shall not discuss or take legal action on matters raised to call to the public unless matters have been properly noticed and discussion and legal action. Due to the time restraints of the meeting, there is a 3-minute limit per speaker. Also, if you have any materials you wish to distribute to the mayor and council, please hand them to the city clerk and she will pass them on to us. The first one I have is James Campbell.
I'm James Campbell, 3800 Ironwood Drive, Paxton Jackson. I live still right there. They still speed. I saw police anyway. Then after they left, they're speeding again. Thank you.
Thank you. Claire Lansing.
Hello, my name is Claire Lansing. I'm owner and operator of Saguaro Fitness Center located in the downtown development area in Apache Junction. We started our facility in 1991. We began by offering classes to children. We later purchased, about a year later, the old post office building, which we have been renovating and sinking a great deal of money and time into for years and years and years. As it happens, we provided for a long time before the multi-generational facility got up and running, we provided fitness programs to individuals. We have an indoor pool, jacuzzi, and sauna. We provide fitness programs for a lot of seniors and arthritis people and have done this for many, many years. We have developed our programs around the needs of the community. We have asked people what they wanted, and based upon those needs, we have implemented the programs as we see that they are needed. We recently, although we have been in the midst of developing this for many, many years, we recently became accredited with the State Department of Health and Human Services to provide a comprehensive rehabilitation service for this community. It includes my daughter's work, which is physical therapy. She is a doctor of physical therapy. I am a psychiatric social worker. We have a medical director who is a well-known, renowned orthopedic surgeon in the area who oversees our programs. We are planning on adding many other medical services, and we have spent a great deal of time and energy putting together a comprehensive program, not just one little service here, one little service there, but a comprehensive. Now, when I read in the newspaper that the city is interested in sponsoring and or using grant money or city funds to provide a medical facility, it occurred to me that I must inquire as to what this might entail and how this might affect our business, which has been working and operating for a great deal of time. And I might add that it has cost no money from the taxpayers to provide these services whatsoever. And that is my statement.
Thank you. Mr. White?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Stephen White, 105 North Delaware. It's not my job to educate you folks about artists' constitutional rights. That's why I went into the federal courts and asked these questions on 2 occasions against the city of Reno, Nevada, and against the city of Sparks, Nevada. It is up to the federal courts to decide what our constitutional rights are, not yours, not the city attorneys, not the city clerks, not mine. That's why we went into court and asked them. I quote the United States Supreme Court, not the United States Supreme Court, I'm sorry, I quote the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, Perry versus Los Angeles City Police Department, 1997. Defendants, L.A. argument implies that plaintiffs, which were the artists, expressive activities should be accorded less protection than they would if those same activities were conducted by nonprofit organizations. This type of speaker-based discrimination is unacceptable. The court has also noted that government may not favor one speaker over another. Once it is decided that the activity is expressive activity fully protected by the First Amendment, the fact that plaintiffs, the artists, are not nonprofit organizations does not affect the level of protection accorded to their speech. Quote, Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, White versus City of Sparks, 2007. It is clear that White's self-expression through paintings constitutes expression protected by the First Amendment. So long as it is an artist's self-expression, the painting will be protected under the First Amendment because it expresses the artist's perspective. Any artist's original painting holds potential to affect public attitudes by spurring thoughtful reflection in and discussion among its viewers. The degree of First Amendment protection is not diminished merely because the protected expression is sold rather than given away. Back to Perry versus LAPD. Because the distinction between expressive activities by members of nonprofit organizations and expressive activities by others is not narrowly tailored to advance the government's interests, the statute is unconstitutional on its face. There is no justification for allowing those with membership in nonprofit organizations to sell their items and solicit donations while disallowing those with no nonprofit membership from the same activities. The regulation is not narrowly tailored enough to pass muster. Bottom line is, folks, we are talking about a pittance in sales tax from artists that the city clerk can't even account for, and yet you spend millions of dollars on sports facilities and horse facilities, God bless you, but you rob our citizens of the arts. There wasn't one mention of the arts in this whole presentation. You leave me no choice but to take this matter into federal court. It is not what I want to do, and the taxpayers are going to have to pay for this. Why won't you learn from the lessons of Sparks and Reno?
Thank you, sir. John Kantowski.
Thank you for your time.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. John Kantowski, 835 Windsong Street, Apache Junction, Arizona. Wow, I come up to congratulate. It was a powerful video. I think Pat did a good job on it, where we've been, what we've done, and where we're going. So, it really, I mean, I got impressed by it. I'm glad you're in person because you looked like you needed a couple pounds off on the video. I'm glad I wasn't up there with you, Ari. I come to you tonight to make a confession. I'm a sinner. I went shopping in Mesa. Okay? My mom come out and she wanted to go to the flea market over there on Signal Butte and Baseline, but I think I got something that can come out of good of it. While I was there, and being a Vietnam veteran, they had a box set up over there for donations to set stuff over to our troops in Iraq and Afghanistan. I picked up one of their flyers, contacted them, and I got a call back today, as a matter of fact, from a girl named Lisa. It's called packagesfromhome.org, and I had talked to Dave Waldron, one of the ex-councilmen, today also about going to the VFW and American Legions. I come tonight to talk to council, and I wanted to talk to George, possibly make a call to you and make an appointment with you. We have a lot of activities coming up in the city here, and I'd like to see the city get involved with this. I talked to this lady, Lisa, Kathleen Lewis, who is the founder of this. She said that we would be glad to come out and see their facilities, how they do it. They operate totally off of donations for cash and for items to do this. You know, for mailing overseas, it's all totally on donations, and I was kind of, after 35 years being out in Vietnam, I kind of forgot what it's like, but I remember some of the basic needs of toiletries, foot powder, man. There was a lot of times I wish I'd had some foot powder in Vietnam and this and that. So I got a little bit of the spark, and I thought maybe if I brought it up in front of council to talk to George, maybe with all these festivities coming up through city properties or getting with the city and these veterans organizations, maybe make a day of it someplace and try and get some of these donations, get some of these out. Whether you're in support of the war or not, this isn't in support of the war, whether you support it or not. This is taking our troops, our neighbors, our friends, whether they are or not, they're out there doing a job for us that our government's asking them to do, and I think they deserve the basic necessities of life. So, again, if I'm going to give you a call, George, maybe we'll sit down and we can talk to council. Like I say, a lot of us have been in the service, so I'd like to see if we can take this spark and make it into a fire and send some of our troops over to some of the stuff that they need. And they have ladies and men over there, whatever they need. So I'm going to make copies of this and try and put it in your mailboxes. Thank you.
Thank you, John. John Taylor?
How you doing? My name's John Taylor. I live at 852 West 19th Avenue. The reason I'm here tonight is I had a letter in the mail the other day about a storage container, which I don't have a storage container. I have a semi-truck trailer, which I think is one and the same. I have a business here, and I use that trailer for my business. It's important that I have it. A lot of it's mostly due to security. I'm in the industrial park down there on 18th Avenue. Pretty much, I know it's against the law right now, but it's vital for a lot of people to have that kind of stuff. And as far as the crime goes, I already had people try to cut through my fence and steal some stuff, and that's why we have it. One. Two is the old saying, out of sight, out of mind. If somebody doesn't see it, it's not there. And I think it's important that we have that. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Nelson Kessberg? I'm sorry, sir, I couldn't make out some of the...
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, my name is Nelson Caseberg. You're close, Mr. Mayor. I live at 3700 South Ironwood Drive. For an elderly couple to be missing for 4 days is unusual. However, even more unusual is the delay in finding them was due to a police foul-up. When I first read the headline in the January 28th edition of the AJ News, my initial reaction was, this can't be true. Chief Wolf's police department would never allow that to happen. Then I reminded myself that Glenn Wolf is no longer the police chief. Little wonder that excellence has been replaced by mediocrity, irresponsibility substituted for irresponsible behavior, lack of accountability, a common modus operandi, and a return to lackluster, good old boy management style in our police department from the top to the bottom. And it took less than 30 days for this to happen. From December 7th, Chief Wolf's last day, until January 4th, when Norbert and Gertrude Wicks were reported missing, our police department became what the Bureaucrat report accused them of, dysfunctional. Dysfunctional, as defined by Dan Webster, says, consequence of a social practice or behavior pattern that undermines the stability of a social system. Synonyms for dysfunctional include broken, debilitated, decayed, defective, flawed, malfunctional, unfit, among countless others. The sloppy police work conducted in the Wicks disappearance could certainly be defined as broken, flawed, defective. Take your pick from the definitions above. Is this the quality of police work that you, members of the City Council, support? In an emergency involving you or a member of your family, do you want a police department that is best defined as one that undermines the stability of a social system? We had a community protected by a professional police department. Now we don't. We had a competent professional police department admired and trusted by the people of Apache Junction. Now we don't. We had a police department that would respond to our needs quickly with authority and understanding. Now we don't. In Glen Walt, we had one of the best trained, most experienced, highly educated police chiefs in the entire country. Now we don't. Mr. Mayor, Members of the City Council, at the conclusion of this meeting, kindly place the security of me and my family, of you and your family, above political consideration. Telephone Chief Walp and beg him to return. It will take courage for you to do this, courage that I hope you possess. I can assure you that I and many others will be watching.
Thank you. Louis Babin.
Mayor, council, and staff, good evening. My name is Louis Babin. I live at 2191 South Bel Air Road, Apache Junction. I was reading a book in my house, and I thought it was relevant to the issue about the artists and their situation, and I wanted to say something to encourage the arts in Apache Junction. It's entitled The Book of Five Rings, written by Miyamoto Musashi, the most famous samurai that ever lived. He, in 60 known battles, he defeated everybody, and he defeated some of his opponents with a wooden sword when they used a steel sword. And this book is of great consequence, but because many wealthy chief executive officers that run large corporations in Japan have also studied this book for companies like Sony and Mitsubishi that they work for. I'd like to read, and what got me to bring this in here, I'd like to read something in this book here. The most famous warrior in Japan that ever lived. And he said, there are four ways in which men pass through life: as gentlemen, farmers, artisans, and merchants. It's interesting that he divides up artisans as a separate class in the four classes of men that he saw through his life. And he refers to the artisan actually as carpenters because everybody knows how beautiful handmade Japanese furniture is. It's actually works of arts in and of itself. And I believe that Jesus Christ was also a carpenter too. It's interesting, he wasn't a Christian. I think he was a Buddhist or something, so there wasn't a connection there. But, well, I'll be darned, wouldn't you know, the most famous samurai that ever lived was also an artisan. He painted ink and artwork and tapestries that are highly prized in Japanese museums throughout the entire country of Japan. And what I'm trying to get the point is that this person knew and understood the relevance of artists. And here in Apache Junction, I don't think we should continually pick on our artists. There's no reason to do it. They're asking for just a reasonable accommodation to allow them to flourish here in Apache Junction. If half of the population of Apache Junction throughout 6 months of the year are visitors here, they're looking for things to do in Apache Junction, and it would be a great idea to encourage artists to come to Apache Junction and flourish here. And I think that Apache Junction should adopt some version of Option X, something that you can tweak or adjust a little bit to fit the city of Apache Junction, to allow the arts to flourish in Apache Junction. And I hope that you can do that. Thank you. Good luck.
Charlie Button. I see you had it emphasized Charlie, so.
Well, you called me other things, so I figured that was the easiest. Before I start my comments, I'd like to mention that there are two people on this board I've never met or discussed. That's Vice Mayor Eck and Ms. Barker, council member. I would like to thank them for bringing objectivity, integrity, accuracy to the meetings and to your decisions. They are personal values of mine. Just in case several of you need to be reminded, this is a government that should be responsive to the citizens' needs and wishes. It is my personal opinion that several of you are more interested in the I word and have totally forgotten that you represent the voice of we the people. Not everyone, anyone individual. I have spent my adult life in the profession of seeking out root cause issues, whether it was researching why an aircraft crashed or why a major airline corporation failed to recognize unlawful complex issues within its published policies and procedures, or why those policies and procedures were inadequate or just not being complied with. Not always, but in many cases, the root cause is or was communications. As I see it here in the city, it is the root cause of why many people are calling for recall or removal. Improve communication with the voters. Don't continue letting the multitude stand outside in the rain, waiting for that white puff of smoke as you would if you were selecting a pope. Talk to them, listen to them, reflect and repeat what you hear to ensure what you think you heard is what they say. Let our city have an inclusive government, not just an esoteric conclave. If you do these things, I would venture to guess the din would be quiet, and the silence heard after would actually hear the voice of we the people. Thank you.
Larry Paslenta? I'm sorry. When you write, it's hard to read some of the letters.
Placencio, Larry
Well, I was
Placencio.
close.
I am here, I'm an owner of a property at 1274 North Delaware. I've been there since 1985. I've been having problems with, the property sits on a private easement. I have contacted the city several times concerning the water runoff onto the easement. The city sends the grader by, the grader knocks the berm down, allows the water to go down the easement. We've repaired the easement I don't know how many times, and every time it rains, the water flows down and fails to go down. It's right at the corner of Delaware and Roundup. Instead of going down Delaware and Roundup, it ends up going down the private easement. And I'm just at the point where we repaired, and the next rain, we're repairing it again. And I'm asking the city to look into a couple of matters. One of the matters that I see is the water flow at that particular intersection. The water doesn't flow properly. It should be flowing down Roundup, and it doesn't. It flows down the easement. One of the persons I contacted with the street department said that they couldn't change the way the water flowed. Well, the city has. They come in with the grader and they cut that berm down. They allow that water to flow down the easement, and it's destroying the area there. I went by there today. The people have started making their own roads because they're trying to get down that road. I don't know what to do anymore. Like I said, I've contacted the city. I've left messages, asked council members to call me back. I've not received calls. I'm just asking for a little help. I'm asking that the city look into this matter. I've been here since, like I said, 1985. I did speak to Vice Mayor Eck. He's seen the situation, and I believe another citizen contacted Mayor Sulaco the other day concerning that. All I'm asking is for the city to look into this matter and see if they can assist us. Not say we can't do it, but let's see how we can fix this. And that's what I'm asking.
Thank you. Steve Flynn?
Steve Flynn, 305 North Acacia. I've written and spoken about the city budget for a short while now. One thing is certain, or in many cases, if you feed the beast, it only demands more. I've learned today that 80% of the week-long entertainment for the Super Bowl was paid for by the private sector. Glendale and the state of Arizona paid the $2 million balance for the frivolous entertainment, and that's about 20%, less than actually. So what was the government's reward, state and local, for paying for some of the expenses? Well, there are some stakeholders, elite stakeholders, I'd call them, who want to reverse the numbers. They would think maybe the state ought to pay 80% along with the cities for these special events. We have smaller issues here, perhaps, but we also have a more limited budget as well. The answer is simple: live within a reasonable budget like families in the cities must do, spend less. Mr. Hoffman wrote about hiring less people because of budget issues. Since the city is not an employment agency, I'd go further. You do not need to hire new employees whose job titles fail to match the proper role of government, which is defending our rights, lives, and liberty and property. I commend you for equipping the new police officers. That does fall in with the proper role of government. I've never advocated layoffs. That's not necessary. You just need to hire less people for certain jobs that are totally unnecessary. The bitter irony of some of these people who want to spend more of our money, certain corporations, for instance, is they will often lobby the legislature to limit our rights. So and they're free to do that, but they want our money, they want to steal from us, and then they want to limit our rights. The legislature often, actually lately, has sometimes proposed bills that are restoring our rights, especially on the Second Amendment. And there are people lobbying against that, and at the same time, they want to steal from us, and I'm quite tired of that. Thank you.
Bo Randall.
Mr. Mayor and City Council members, I'm Bo Randall, Randall's Towing, Auto Body, here in AJ. And it's come to our attention.
Give me an address, sir.
It's 1361 East 18th Avenue. It's come to our attention that the police department, okay, is introducing or going to introduce a section to you about adding tow companies to our rotation list. You got 3 companies here now. I've been here 15 years. C.L. King has been here since the city, before the city was here. He's been here forever. Terry Secor, Action Towing. The 3 of us have been here. We've been covering this city with no problems. Anything the police department needs, one of us 3 companies is there to take care of it. On that same note, you got 3 more companies that you're wanting to add that you haven't even done an investigation on. And you've got us out here that are already doing all of this towing for the city, and our retention factor is over 60% of the cars that we're towing for the city of Apache Junction, we're retaining. We're paying the bill on that, not the city of Apache Junction and stuff. These cars are costing us an average of $300 to $500 to dispose of because these people don't have insurance or they just don't come get their cars, period. But now you want to add 3 more companies to a rotation list for 3 companies that are already here killing themselves to keep your police department and these city streets clean and clear of debris, clear of abandoned vehicles that are just dumped on your streets. And we're the ones cleaning this up, and we're the ones that are paying the price for it, not the city of Apache Junction. We're doing this as a business owner here in the city. And we're trying to help you, but now you want to add 3 more companies. You add 3 more companies, that's going to put the 3 of us into starvation and stuff, and you're asking us to leave. I've put over $500,000 into this town in the last 15 years in equipment and stuff to cover this. You know, I can afford it. I can't afford to keep clearing the streets for you for free. You know, it can't happen. And if you got 3 more companies on there, the 3 that have been here that are devoted to you, we're going to starve to death. And we're going to be forced to move. Thank you.
Ernest Imbaugh.
Mr. Mayor, City Council, my name is Ernest Imbaugh, I live in 2835 West Cody. I just want to make a couple of statements about the work session we had to discuss Option X, or didn't discuss. First of all, the information on Option X was given to each and every one of you long before this meeting came up, and thank Mr. Soddy for even getting it on the agenda. And then it was on the agenda, and we sat here 3.5 hours, and we weren't even allowed to answer questions or even participate because of some rule. Well, everybody else was here, and they all talked. They all said everything they wanted to say. And we weren't allowed to speak. And then there was a question asked, what is Option X? That kind of hit me right between the eyes. How could you ask a question like that when we gave you the information what it was? And the answer was, there's no federal law that says you've got to accept this. Was that the answer to what is Option X? Then he read Option X. And he didn't tell you why you should or why you shouldn't. Those questions were, now why should Apache Junction adopt Option X? Or why shouldn't we adopt Option X? And the answer would have became clear. And Mr. Wilson, I'd like to answer your comments about our forefathers and our founding mothers if we start picking and choosing people who we exempt and don't exempt, it will become problematic. Then we'll have to raise taxes. Are you saying you're not going to anyway? And you don't have to worry about picking and choosing because the United States Supreme Court has already done that for you. It's already in black and white. Read. We gave you all this information for 4.5 years. You asked Kathy, and she said there's no exemptions in the city code. Well, I beg to differ. I know of 2 and 3. And the third one disappeared because I went to look for it and it was gone. But you do have commission artwork, and you have nonprofit groups. You do have exemptions. So that was erroneous information. So just food for thought. I'll tell you one good reason why you should adopt it, because if you did, this never would have got to where it is today with threats of litigation against our city. It would have took our city's head off the chopping block forever and gave everyone the right they already have, because that's all we asked for 4 years. There was no anger. There was no animosity. I never got mad at nobody. I'm very disappointed. That's all I can say. I'm very disappointed. Thank you.
Jim Stevens.
Jim Stevens, 3700 South Ironwood in Apache Junction. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council, and staff. My comments tonight are directed mostly toward Mayor Insulaco. In the Independent newspaper, you were recently quoted as stating that you wanted the input from the public. You wanted to listen to their suggestions as to what they want for our city. You also mentioned that you were thinking of holding town hall meetings to get our input. I want to remind the citizens of our city that only a short time ago, several of us held up signed surveys with approximately 1,000 signatures that wanted to keep Chief Walt. And your comments were that you didn't care what we wanted, your mind was made up. When you heard that nearly 250 people would show up at a council meeting to support Chief Walt, which they did, I might add, you stated that these citizens can stand outside and yell all they want. It won't make any difference. We believed your rhetoric once, at least at election time, but we're not buying it this time. Also, at the last meeting, a concerned citizen expressed a concern about a rumor that one of our council members had made a racial slur, and he asked Mr. Hoffman to look into it. Maybe I can be of help here to narrow it down. I heard the same egregious rumor that allegedly occurred during an official city meeting in the presence of 2 other city employees. More specifically, it alleged that you stated, "I want those wetbacks out of the city." As a citizen of this city and on behalf of other concerned citizens, we want to know the truth. Did our mayor refer to Hispanics in this derogatory manner? We have the right to know the truth. I was also recently told that while talking to one of my friends, you allegedly stated that you were not concerned about the recalls because several of them were pulled by a disgruntled employee and that he would not act on them. They were all bogus. When asked if you knew the name of the employee, you stated it was Jim Stevens. Well, I'm not bogus. The recall attempt is underway, and at this time I'd like to inform the council that I intend to place my name on the ballot for one of the positions. Lastly, when I spoke at an earlier council meeting in support of Chief Walt, while I was an employee of the city, I apparently angered you, as several individuals told me that they heard you say at the close of that meeting that you would have me taken care of. If true, I want you to explain to me and the citizens of the city what you meant by that. Also, I remind you that if true, that type of statement against a city employee is a violation of city policy. Thank you.
Ernest Vines, Inc., Earl Vines.
Mr. Mayor and Council, my name's Earl Binns. I live at 2210 East Sneak. I have one of the container units in my place, and I've had 2 notices on it, and I bought it back. I moved down here in 2000, and there was a lot of theft and stuff going on. I had horse property, and so I see several units, and never thought about checking the code or anything. I see, the units around, so I purchased one, and we've got several notices, 2 notices so far on it, and we'd like a directory of what's going to happen, or how much time, or what we're going to do with them to get rid of them. I'm sure if they're not within the code, nobody's going to be wanting to purchase them. So what do we do with them? So I appreciate any information, and as soon as possible, if we could. Thank you.
Krista Rizzi.
My name is Krista Rizzi. I live at 1755 South Sombrero Road here in Apache Junction. On a little lighter note, I'm here to bring to your attention some safety concerns that we have around our school zones. And I need a little bit of help putting a map up. Excuse me. Yeah, if I could. Okay. I have a couple maps just to make it a little easier to point out the areas of concern.
They changed the keypad, Mr. Bryant. Yeah, it's.
And forgive me if they're not, if they're a little blurry, but I got caught in the rainstorm.
Technology 101. We all need to take it, obviously.
Yeah, we probably should.
Okay. Hopefully I think they're visible enough to get my point across. What we're looking at here is Ironwood. This would be Ironwood heading north. Here, let me if I turn it. There we go. This is Ironwood heading north, just north of the freeway. The freeway's down here. This little drive area is coming out of the transportation department. Obviously, buses and other school vehicles come out of here. The point of concern is at this median right here. Disgruntled drivers, frustrated drivers coming up from Queen Creek in that long wait are bypassing traffic that's getting on the freeway down here. They're coming up and making a U-turn around the median and getting onto the freeway here, but they're doing it, they're crossing right in front of buses. This is really a safety issue. Uh-oh.
No, you're good for a minute.
You're good.
Okay, I have another one, another area of concern. But what we're wondering is if there's any way to get a no U-turn sign here. Just, obviously you can see the safety issues. And this right here is, this is Southern Avenue. You can see where our pool is. And then we have Desert Shadows School. It's a little tiny, forgive me, I'm not that great on the computer. This is a little pull-off area right here. There's a crosswalk here. There's a crosswalk approximately here. A lot of traffic up and down Southern in front of Desert Shadows. There's a little pull-off area where parents pull in to drop students. But again, what's happening is these parents are pulling out of here and doing a U-turn in front of oncoming traffic. Now, I don't know if there's any way to get some kind of something, no U-turn or something. Just, it's a safety concern. Thanks for your time. Wish I did.
Thank you.
With the map.
Alice Hill. You pass, okay. Shannon Flynn.
Hello, I'm Shannon Flynn from 305 North Acacia. I'm going to be talking tonight on a letter from a wife of a police officer. Apparently, this woman was able to get some treatment from our pound out here, our animal control, and she basically says that she lives 10 feet from the border of Pinal County and Maricopa County, that the city borders are right in front of her home. Because of this, her husband called Sergeant Ron Paw for permission for the animal control to drive 10 feet across the border to help them. They not only put the dog down at the home that is not in Apache Junction, but they also went ahead and carried the dog back to the animal shelter, the pound. This is corruption, and maybe a small form of it, but it is a really big issue. I have issues with this. I want to know why Mr. Hoffman J. Swartz would approve such a thing. And I've got phone calls in. I'm really upset about this. The lady even says that her husband is a police officer for Apache Junction Police. So my point of view is, well, if he's a police officer, he's asking for special treatment, and he got it. He does not live in the city. He does not live in our county. They are on Maricopa land. I looked at the address, and this needs to stop. We don't have any money in this pound to be doing this. The animal control, I know several of the people that work there. I'm appalled that Jay Swartz would even consider doing what he's done, if indeed he did what he did by allowing this to take place. I have a phone call into Jay Swartz. I have a call into, I believe the officer's name is Tim Schilder. And I've also talked to one of the secretaries over at the animal control, and she's looking into this. This brings me to the fact that I've gotten pretty involved in politics here lately, really upset about some of the things that are going on, and I too will be running. So it's no longer a rumor. With or without the recall process, I will run. Mr. Hoffman, I will ask that you get a hold of me to figure out why Jay did this, and see if it wasn't Jay, because they're saying it might be Sergeant Ron Paul as well that approved this, how that could go by and be passed as it was. Thank you.
Pam Mosier.
Hi there. My name is Pam Mosier. I live on Monterey Drive in Apache Junction. Here we are again. It's been almost 1 year spent on the issue of the cargo containers. Personally, I feel it has been a waste of time and effort, not only for the certain council members that have really listened to the citizens and put time and effort into this, but the citizens who have spent so much time and effort working toward getting this taken care of a very long time ago. There is an absolute need for these cargo containers on large properties and in industrial areas, but the personal property owner, they are strong, they're weatherproof, they're rodent-proof, theft-proof, they protect precious items. You don't have a lot of space, but you want to hand down items to loved ones. They're right there on your property. We've gone over this over and over and beat a dead horse to death. It's time to consider the things that are really important rather than wasting effort and time on other issues. These affect people's lives. I deal with people's lives every day in the emergency room, in working with an ambulance company, in the ER. Just from my own point of view, my daughter went in for a 45-minute procedure. She's 22 years old. 10 minutes into the procedure, she flatlined. And I had to, instead of taking her home in a couple hours, I had to walk into ICU and see her on 100% life support. Today, we got the news that she had been pregnant and she has no heartbeat and lost that baby. So those are the things that are important, not bickering back and forth over what to do, where to put a cargo container, how high a sign should be, what plants should be allowed and not allowed. People's lives are affected here, and you guys need to listen to the people who voted you in and not be continuing on with the mentality of the ninth graders. Thank you.
Charles Duffy.
Mayor, council members. First of all, I'm Charles Duffy at 768 South Warner. One of the first things I want to express is I have done nothing wrong. Back in December of 2007, I asked my wife to go down to the city to find out and inquire about putting a semi-trailer, 45-foot, on my property. Well, when she talked to the lady down there, she said that the requirements would have to be met. 4 foot from the property line, and must be below the peak of the house, must leave the wheels on it, and build a 6-foot fence around the trailer. About a week later, I decided I'd call and spoke to the inspector, and was told the same information, explained what I was going to do, dig a hole for the semi to set in so it will be below the peak of the house, and was told to make sure that the wheels were visible. On the weekend of December 29th and 30th, I rented a backhoe, dug the hole for the semi-trailer. December 31st, I had a tow company come out, at my business in Tempe, pick up the trailer and tow it out there and insert it into the hole. From December 31st till January 15th, I moved dirt back under the semi-trailer, finished putting the industrial sewing machines that I sell for my business, and which weigh anything from 45 to 65 pounds apiece, back in there. That trailer was lined with 7-foot-high shelving all the way across on both sides. On both sides. I received a letter from the city dated January 15, 2008, stating that I had a shipping container on my property and was not allowed in the city of Apache Junction, and I had 14 days to remove it. If I would have known this to begin with, it would never have come to the city of Apache Junction. I went back down to the city and was told that the semi-trailer are now classified as shipping containers, and I have to remove it. If I asked for an extension and was told there was no extension, and after 14 days the case will be turned over to the city attorney. I went to the city attorney, and he said he was not aware of the problem at the time, and he told me to write a letter to George Hoffman explaining what happened and what transpired. I never got that meeting. Currently, I am dismantling that trailer. I need an extension. I don't need $1,000 a day penalty, and I do not need 6 months in jail. Thank you.
Greg Fesco.
Mayor, council members, my name is Greg Fesco. I live at 2373 North Grand Drive in Apache Junction, and I'm here also to talk about the shipping containers as well. As I understand, there hasn't been a final decision made on the shipping containers, although it seems to me like the cart was put before the horse, because you guys were mandated or told the planning and zoning that the shipping containers had to be moved. I also received actually 2 letters. At the time that I put the shipping container on my property, I was not aware of any ordinance against them, as I too had seen them in different places, in different locations at homes and businesses around the city. The shipping container that I bought cost me $2,000. It provides me with security. I have horses and I have a lot of expensive tack and so forth that I store in that container. I had an extra door put on as far as safety, regarding safety. It's a regular door with a deadbolt. I've put wood siding up around it. It looks like a building that you would just have built. I'm asking that to make your decision regarding the shipping containers, that you make a logical and wise decision, as there's many of these containers around the valley here. For me to remove that container would be a great expense and loss. As I said, it cost me over $2,000 for the shipping container. We've had a lot of theft in the area. I've had things stolen off my property, and I haven't had anything stolen out of my property since I put the shipping container on, because it does provide me with the security that I need. So I'm just asking that you make a wise decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Has anybody got any comments to make? Or okay, let's start with Robin.
I'd like to.
No. Well, I don't have it.
I filled it out and put it in there.
What was the name?
Mike Burton. I own Perks RV and Trailer Supply.
Well, I didn't get it. Well, come on up, sir. It wasn't in there. Unless I'm sorry, because it.
No, it's okay. I'm Mike Burton. I own American Power Equipment. And a year and 3 months ago, we bought Perks and RV and Trailer Supply out. Sorry. And when we bought the place, the cargo containers were already on the property. There's 2 of them. They were green. We've since painted them white to blend in. And they provide security and everything, and also hold all our inventory. And we really need it. I mean, the place is pretty small and everything, so we really need to have it. Provides a lot of security. And if we can't keep it on there, I mean, we're probably going to have to take our business elsewhere. probably right over the line to Mesa. And also got one of them letters, and I was really deterred because I didn't get the 14-day letter. I just got a prosecute letter. And that's all I got. So I'm really upset about this, and I've stewed all day about it, and I've called several of you today about it, and I have painted it, tried to make it pleasing, but apparently it's not working. But we all voted you in. I mean, this is something that's supposed to be for the businesses, and I'm not seeing that. Thank you.
Okay. Councilmember Barker?
I'd just like to direct staff to talk to a few people. Kathy, if you could get Ms. Lansing together with the grants folks so that she understands what those are, and Mr. Palencia with somebody from Streets or Shane to discuss his flood needs, and Ms. Krista, if you can get her together with somebody who can let her know if those U-turn signs are a possibility or if there's anything else that can occur there.
Councilman Surtee?
Yeah, I asked you yesterday and didn't really get an answer. On the people that just got the letter, what are they supposed to, because we're going to decide in 2 weeks, correct? At the next meeting? What are they supposed to do in the meantime?
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Surtee, we can't really discuss those issues at this time. This is just for, you can respond to criticism under the law, but, and then you could direct staff to talk to people or handle certain issues that were brought up tonight.
Well, that was brought up by several people that just got a letter within the last few days. So what are they supposed to do? How do we tell them what to do? I mean,
direct staff to
direct staff. So I would direct the city manager to respond to their inquiries.
ASAP.
We're discussing that at the end of the meeting. We can direct staff on how to act on these.
Yes, there is a direction to staff item later tonight, number 19 on the agenda, and that will be discussed fully by the council. It is not open to the public, however, or public comment.
They can be here, they just can't address us, so be
That's
patient
correct.
until.
It's not agendized for the public to speak.
Right.
Vice Mayor?
I got quite a few of them. Yeah, I agree with her with the clarity.
Councilmember Stevens, you got it?
Yes, Your Honor. John Kantowski.
I forgot John, sorry.
What I do now? We have the Lost Dutchman's Days Parade and Festival coming up here real soon, and we talked last night about a city council booth there. And I'd like to see if there's any way that we can arrange that we could do the package from home and do some kind of collections while there from the city council, from our city representatives. And let's send them something and show them that we care.
Rick, do you have anything?
No, she got it.
Okay.
Real quickly with Claire, I agree that I don't know if Heather can get with her, explain this grant process with Mrs. Lansing, but I really have to compliment her because she has done what the community's needs are before she's put her own livelihood at stake. So I think it's something very important to her. I'd like to also see if we could do the possibility on the no U-turn signs. I thought Mr. Kowalski's idea was good for the donation box at events. Lost Dutchman Days came to mind right away, of course. I believe AJ promotes the arts all we can, the legal arts. I wish we could get this resolved with the few who, are so disgruntled with this. I'd like, George, if we could, to get a report on the animal control incident so we're aware of what happened. Larry Placenzo, I've been out to his house a number of times. I even went a month ago when it rained, and there is a water problem off the right-of-way. So I hope we could take a new direction at it and see if we can't try to help those people out with that. my son-in-law wrecked his motorcycle a couple months ago. A towing company came out to get him out towards the lake. And I asked the guy, you know, how it was going, and he said, it's dead. He says, we're hardly making it. There's 3 towing companies in town, and they're on this list. And I didn't realize we were adding to that list, but I think 3 is probably adequate, and I'd like to see the 3 local ones, of course. If something we could look into that to see if 3 would be adequate, I believe so. There was a comment made about how the police handled the situation. Mr. Kelly, acting chief of police, was pretty much handpicked by Chief Glenn Walp, and we have a lot of faith in him. And I think it's a shame because it's I would ask you not to take anything negative that was said here tonight, because we have plenty of faith in you, Mr. Kelly. And I would not in my life hear our mayor use the word that Mr. Stevens said he used. The man's from Globe, Miami, that's 60% Hispanic, and that's 60% of his business. So I'm sorry, I don't accept the fact that that word was used. So I think it's derogatory to even make that comment. Mr. Duffy, I had here Charles Duffy. Please leave the information so we can contact him. Yep.
There was a comment that was made by one of these tow companies, which I got a funny feeling all 3 companies are owned by one party, that they were here to put these 3 other companies out of business. And that's not the way we do business here. So I'd sure like to make sure that, you know, and these 3 companies have been here a long time, and they have served this community well. So I hope what is in the works is not in the works. Let's take a 10-minute break. going to, there was one call to the public that fell on the floor, so I will open up the call to the public for one more person. Joseph Snyder.
My name is Joe Sneer.
Oh, Sneer, I'm sorry.
3700 South Ironwood, Apache Junction. Mr. Mayor, council members, I read the letter that Ms. Sakani wrote to the AJ News, and in this letter she told the story of having a problem with her pet dog. I'm sympathetic with her situation, as I also love dogs, and I just recently put my own pet down. However, I do question why someone that does not live in the city gets special treatment. An Apache Junction police sergeant gives permission to not charge another policeman for the service that anyone else would have had to pay for. I paid $235 to have my dog put down. She paid $50. When the animal control officer was asked if he charged for this service, he said that he did not because it was a police officer and a friend. I know that Mrs. Shikani paid for this service because she said so in the paper, but not until after the police sergeant was questioned about his actions. Then she paid. That's an after the fact. As a citizen of the city, I'm requesting that an internal investigation be conducted on this matter to determine why taxpayer funds were initially used to pay for services outside the city limits. Are we going to do this for anyone outside of the city that has a need? If not, why not? This is called corruption. We cannot allow the city employees or officials do favors for others at the expense of taxpayers. This city wants to become a big-time city. Well, it's time to end the corruption and the Good Old Boys Club. Thank you.
Manager's comments?
For the city manager's report, Your Honor?
Yes.
Several items. What formerly was the library lobby where the restrooms are located is now reopened. The east wing, where the children's services area was, is now closed until the renovation is completed. Children's services are being temporarily offered in the new addition until the east wing reopens. Free AARP tax help is available at the library from 9 a.m. till 12 noon, Saturdays through February 2nd through April 12th, 2008, excluding February 16th when the library is closed. Tax help is offered on a first-come, first-served basis. Finally, Your Honor, there had been some discussion in the media about a bond issue, and I wanted to offer some context and clarification. You have as an item on your work plan Capital Facilities Plan 2, and you have a discussion about streets and how best to finance streets. The basic issue that we will analyze and offer you perspective on is that in recent years we've had rapid price increases in asphalt, which is petroleum-based, concrete, and steel, basic construction materials. They've risen very, very rapidly. The question, the fiscal analytic question is, does it make more sense to go pay-as-you-go for your street improvements, which is what we're doing right now. We've paid off our street bonds and we're going pay-as-you-go, or in a context of rapid price increases, does it make sense to borrow money at 4 or 5%, whatever the current rate is, and bond for that? We don't know the answer off the top of our heads. We'll do an analysis on that, and we'll come back for a discussion with you. So there's no bond election scheduled. It's not contemplated right now. What is contemplated is an analysis of what is the most frugal way to provide for streets, maintenance, and enhancements in this community. And that concludes my report, Your Honor.
Thank you. Application for interim permit, new license, limited liability company, Series 10 liquor license for AJ's Mini Mart, TJ Fuels. Kathy?
Thank you, Your Honor. Excuse my voice. This, as you just stated, this is an application for AJ's Mini Mart. It's a Series 10 liquor license. You have no objections from either internal staff or the fire district. The applicant is present this evening in the event you have any questions of him.
Would the applicant like to speak?
Good evening, Your Honor, council members. My name is Randy Nations. I own and operate a company known as Arizona Liquor Industry Consultants, and I'm the one that prepared and is in process of getting this liquor license through the city and hopefully through the state. I'm going to change the subject for just a second and tell you, I was a highway patrolman in Apache Junction back in 1971 till 1976. And this is my first time out here in quite a while, and I cannot believe the changes you folks have made out here. This is incredible. You're be committed because you're a big city now. Anyway, back to where we were. I've been listening to people holler at you all night, so I thought I'd add something to maybe lighten things up a little bit. But I'm here to answer any questions that you folks might have.
Keep going.
Please.
Is there any questions for the applicant? Thank you very much.
You betcha.
This is a public hearing. Is there anyone in the public that would like to speak on this item? Hearing and seeing none, I'll close the hearing. Is there any discussion? If not, I'll call for a motion. Yes.
I move that the application for an interim permit, new license, limited liability company, Series 10 liquor license for AJ's Mini Mart, TJ Fuels, submitted by, I'm not going to get this right, Jadine Saran, be recommended for approval to the Arizona Department of Liquor License, and I apologize about the name.
Second. Moved and seconded. Roll call.
Councilmember Barker?
Yes.
Councilmember Dietz?
Yes.
Councilmember Severs?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Eck?
Yes.
Councilmember Wilson?
Yes.
Councilmember Surtee?
Yes.
Mayor Insalata?
Yes.
Unanimous, Your Honor.
Application for temporary extension of premises for Fraternal Order of Eagles. Kathy?
Yes, Your Honor. The Eagles organization is wanting to host a chili cook-off within the next few weeks. They are requesting a temporary extension of premises so that they can extend their service area just for this event for a limited period of time. Again, there are no objections to the temporary extension, and the applicant is here in the event you have any questions.
Any questions from the applicant who would like to speak?
It's right here.
I have no questions. No questions? Does anybody have any questions for me? I guess not. This is a public hearing. Anyone would like to speak on this item? If not, I'll close the hearing. Any discussion? Call for a motion.
Your Honor?
Yes.
I move that the application for an extension on premises for the Fraternal Order of Eagles for Lost Dutchman Day, February 16, 2008, submitted by Charles Ivan Kinsey, be recommended for approval to the Arizona Department of Liquor License and Control.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Roll call.
Vice Mayor Eck?
Yes.
Councilmember Wilson?
Yes.
Councilmember Surtee?
Yes.
Councilmember Barker?
Yes.
Councilmember Severs?
Yes.
Councilmember Dietz?
Yes.
Mayor Insalata?
Yes.
Unanimous, Your Honor.
Consideration and selection of projects for fiscal year 2008 Community Development Block Grant Funds and State Special Projects. Heather.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. Tonight is our second public hearing for the fiscal year 2008 CDBG program. Tonight, what we would hope to do is have a public hearing to collect some additional citizen input as far as what we would like to use the CDBG funds for, and then ask the council to select projects that they would like for staff to move forward with and complete applications. Applications are due to the state at the end of May. We have two funding sources. One, the CDBG regional count, which we're estimating at receiving about $260,000. And then we have the state special projects funds, which is a competitive process, and we can ask for up to $300,000 on that. So we would like to determine which project if you would like for the regional count and which project you would like for the state special projects. If you recall, back on December 18th, we had our first public hearing. That evening, you directed staff to look at a short list of projects to determine their eligibility. And then on January 15th, we presented those projects to the council and advised you of which projects were eligible and which ones were not. From that list, this is the breakdown of the projects that were eligible, and we also broke it out between the two different funding sources of which one would be most competitive or most eligible to put an application in for. I can go over those projects. The first one being downtown redevelopment project or plan. The second one being a housing project, which would be infill, and that's working with Habitat for Humanity. The next one is another housing project of working with Habitat for Humanity, again on doing another subdivision. The fourth project being street improvements, and that was kind of an open list of projects waiting for Public Works to determine which ones they wanted to include. And I received a list of 4 different locations where some improvements could be done. All 4 locations are eligible. I can go over those really quickly. The first one being an improvement over on Cedar Drive between Broadway and 16th Avenue. Second one being over on Shiprock Street between Cedar and Warner. Third, Thunderbird and Superstition. And then fourth, Tomahawk and Junction. And then our fifth project being, drainage improvements. So these 4 projects pretty much fall between street and drainage. There was also another drainage project that was for an entire kind of neighborhood that was between Idaho and San Marcos and what was the northern part? Sorry, the southern and Broadway with the 2 other boundaries. And then our state special project options would be doing a housing rehabilitation program, which we do currently have, so this would be a continuation, or emergency rehabilitation, which also we do currently have, so it would be a continuation of the 2 programs that do exist. See, I'd be happy to answer any questions about those projects. Otherwise, our next step in the process, what we decide on tonight to move forward with on projects, I would come back on February the 19th and then again on March 4th with a resolution that would officially adopt saying what applications we would be submitting to the state for the projects.
Your
Honor. Yes. Go ahead.
Heather, on the state special projects, now we're doing both number 1 and 2, housing, rehab, and emergency. Are there long waiting lists for both of those? Or is it just the housing rehab that there's a long waiting list on?
Actually, we're seeing a larger increase on the emergency rehabilitation program.
It's a larger one on the emergency?
Much larger, yes.
So it seems like it'd be much better than to go with a larger waiting list?
Well, yes. At this point, I would have to say yes. There's several factors that make the emergency rehabilitation program more attractive to not only the citizens, but to the city at this point in time. So the list is a lot larger, and people are more interested in signing up for that one, yes.
Great. And our chances of receiving that one is much greater for the special projects?
Either one of them, actually. Any housing component or project is very attractive to the state for that, yes.
Thank you.
Your Honor.
Yes.
Heather, on the street ones, the first one you read, Cedar between Broadway and 16th Avenue, what's the cost of that?
Well, that one in particular, the cost estimate at this point was given to me at $1.6 million, so this would just be a component of that. Yeah. That's what was proposed by.
I thought if it's going to go down 2/3 or something or half,
Yeah, we would certainly identify a specific section that we would pay for with the CDBG funds.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll just do like a.
Yes.
Just as a point of clarification, Heather, because it kind of got jumped over, the drainage was very specific for the properties between Idaho and Buena Vista, and that was considered not eligible, correct?
Well, actually, the whole area as a whole, according to the census, is not 51% or more low to moderate income. However, I have been told that if we did a survey, that it would probably come up as reaching that point, but that does take additional staff resources.
And we're on a deadline at this point. Okay, thank you.
Anything else? This is a public hearing. Anybody like to speak on this item?
Yes, Louis Babin, 2191 South Bel Air Road. Concerning the street improvements, if that means widening streets, doesn't that help the city of Apache Junction with the PM10 standards, keeping the dust from being blown on the streets? Or could any street improvement that's reasonable within the budget help with the PM10 standards? I think that would, if you could use some of that money for that, I think that'd be a good idea. Thank you.
Anyone else? I can't see you back there with Elliot.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Elliot Fisher, 547 East Quail, Apache Junction, Arizona, Greater Apache Junction Association for Effective Government. One comment. With all this budget issues and where housing is today, I'm just wondering if the council might consider rolling back the impact fees that were imposed recently. Thank you.
Anyone else? If not, I'll close the hearing. Is there any more discussion?
I just say, I agree with you, Louis, about trying to get as many streets paved as possible. Been trying to get Cedar done for about 8 years now. This amount of money would do about a third of one small street. So it's going to take something a whole lot more to get some streets done.
So we're not deciding anything tonight, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Well,
We are.
I think the order we've got them there, I mean,
Yeah.
downtown redevelopment, if we get that developed, it will help these other things take care of themselves.
I'm sure that it should.
I mean, we can't ignore that area, especially now that we've done baseline in Idaho. We need to take care of the downtown, and then these other things they'll fall in and they'll benefit from doing the downtown.
Yes.
What would that, Heather, I'm sorry, what would that entail, the downtown redevelopment, as far as the 260,000?
Okay, this plan would, basically, what we're hoping to do is look at the Grand Hotel property and do a plan that, yeah. Brad could talk a little bit more eloquently on that.
Good try. Good evening, Mayor, Council. Brad Stanky, Development Services Director. We talked at a meeting or so ago that this is an opportunity to bring in a consultant or group of consultants to help us create that vision, to help us work through what it is we want for the downtown, and translate that into a plan and into an implementation strategy so we can start to get that ball rolling that you all are so concerned about doing. So with the help of this grant, we can bring that talent in and start to move forward.
I apologize, I was not at that meeting, so
Oh,
I missed that information.
Is there anything else?
I think Jeff's right. The order that's on there is pretty much.
I agree.
I think we should, for the special projects, really go towards the emergency.
If we have to move the emergency up, yeah.
That seems to be the more important, since it's a much longer waiting list.
Okay.
Is there anything else for Heather? Thank you, Heather.
Thank you.
Heather, do you need a motion?
Yes. Yes, we need a motion. Yes. I'll call for that motion.
Okay. You guys are real eager to give the motion when it's a given. I move that the following projects be selected for fiscal year 2008 Community Development Block Grant funds and special state funds, that the downtown redevelopment come under the RA section, and that emergency rehab come under the SSP.
Amen.
Moved and second.
Excuse me, do we only, we just want one for each one, is that what it is?
Yes.
Okay, very good.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I thought so.
Third?
Roll call.
Seconds aren't hard to get.
Councilmember Wilson. Thank you. Councilmember Surtee.
Yes.
Councilmember Barker.
Yes.
Councilmember Deeds.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Eck.
Yes.
Councilmember Severs.
Yes.
Mayor Slaughter.
Yes.
Unanimous, Your Honor.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Direction to staff on administrative zoning discretion. Brad.
At your December meeting, we talked about some ideas that came out of your work program. And your work program suggested we talk about ways that we might be able to create more user-friendly regulations or administrative procedures for zoning issues, rather than having to go through a very formal process, for example, of taking it to Board of Adjustment and going through Planning Commission. Is there a way we can somehow at the staff level be given some discretion to do some things that make, in your words, some common sense? Well, we visited with you. We talked about 2 or 3 items that communities have done, have legally done, and been successful. Number 1 being the 10% reduction or waiver that you allow staff to waive or modify dimensional zoning requirements, setbacks, offsets, heights, those sorts of things by 10%. That gives some wiggle room to allow reasonable development to occur without affecting the intent and spirit of the zoning code. Second one would be to just go in and do surgical changes to the zoning code regulations. For example, one of the issues that came up was someone wanted to put a trailer on their property. Our law requires that be in the back of a property, but they could not physically do it. Is there a way that we could create a specific law that stipulated very simply, if they cannot find the location in the rear or the side of the property, they'll work with staff to come up with an alternate location? Those are specific sort of tactical zoning changes that we have a list of things that we would come back to you with. The third was this hearing officer. In cities that have a very large workload of appeals to the Board of Adjustment, they sometimes put in place a hearing officer that can hear these appeals, these requests for variances, apply the same standards as the Board of Adjustment, and try to shortcut the process by which the applicant would have to go through. If they aren't satisfied with that particular person's decision, they then could go to Board of Adjustment. And then finally, one that I heard a few members of the council asking for, and that is there some way we can just give staff the ability to apply common sense to situations and the particular characteristics of a property to allow variation to zoning standards when no one's harmed, for example? And there's a lot of assumptions in all of that, but that was what I heard some members asking for. So what we're asking for you tonight to do is to basically formally give us direction. You did sort of give us direction in December, but I jumped the gun on that. We have to come back to this sort of meeting to formally get that. And then we will try to draft ordinance language to bring it back to you. I will say, though, in that last comment about giving staff this blanket authority, I do know that the city attorney wants to speak to that particular issue.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I don't recommend it. That is very vague language. There would be arbitrary and capricious lawsuits if you pass such a law. You've got to have black and white rules. If you're going to do anything with variances under the law, under Title IX, it is the Board of Adjustment that decides variances. You could appoint a hearing officer. You could certainly do that. And then that person could do what the Board of Adjustment does. However, if anybody aggrieved didn't like that particular decision, they can then go to the Board of Adjustment. You still would have to have a Board of Adjustment as an appellate board. Once you hit 100,000 people, the city council is the Board of Adjustment. That's all.
Okay.
Your Honor.
Yes.
I have to say, it confuses me to, after going on about 11 years now, not having a policy and staff following a policy. Now, if that policy is wrong, then we need to change it in some way. But I don't see how we can tell, well, we don't like what you said because that's against policy, so we want to go get your boss and get your supervisor out here and see if we can't get him to change his mind, you know, and I just don't see how that would work.
Your Honor?
Yes.
I think the question is whose common sense? I mean, your common sense and my common sense may not be so common.
Yeah.
So I think that's very shaky.
It's vague.
Who called?
I did.
Oh, okay.
At this point in time, I think anybody's common sense would be nice.
I disagree.
We have a property here where a travel trailer is in the front yard, and there is no backyard. There is no way in the world to put a travel trailer in that backyard. We need to have somebody who can practice common sense and go out and look at that property and say, you know what? You're right. There is no physical way to put this in the backyard. How about if we put it over here? And that is exactly what has just happened in this last case. They were...
Well, didn't you move it?
Yes.
There you go.
I had to
That's
go
all I
out
know.
and help move this thing, and we put it into a different location in the yard. It was not the backyard, but based on staff's discretion, staff's common sense, they found another location that would work and make it simpler on the citizen. And that's what needs to happen here. And if we have to change the wording so it says in the rear or side yard, when possible, then that's what we need to do. But we need to keep it as simple as possible. And I know, Joel, you don't like this because it's arbitrary and capricious. It could get us lawsuits. There needs to be a way to simplify. And if it means, let's give them a little bit of discretion based on a field inspection. Gee, this one, you cannot go by the law the way it is written. What is the intent of the law? We need to go by the intent, not the letter of the law in some cases. Not all circumstances apply to every single person in every single circumstance. It doesn't work.
Your Honor, I think that's precisely what Brad said earlier before the common sense thing, because the problem is that you've disagreed with some of the common sense decisions that have been made by staff. So that's not a good way to do it. I mean, you've already disagreed with those, as have many council people in the past and will in the future. So there has to be some kind of guideline there to
That's right.
help them. So the common sense aspect needs to be thrown out, and we need to make these ordinances have a little give. But that's not common sense. It still is the ordinance. It still follows
It's
it.
flexibility.
It still follows the ordinance, and that's the whole point that Joel's trying to make, is just make an ordinance that people can actually follow, not something that they can use as a bargaining chip.
But you can't always follow it in every circumstance. So how do we deal with that?
Well, your solution and someone else's may not be the same thing, so there has to be some kind of a line.
Wouldn't the hearing officers seem to be the logical way to go, so that they don't have to go through Board of Adjustments and pay all the fees and everything? This person
If they
can go out
agree.
and review and look at it and make a judgment on it, and
That-
then they still have that option to go to Board of Adjustments after that.
That would be a very logical way of doing it, but I think that there's one that's a little bit simpler. And it's give staff the authority based on certain criteria. You know, and this one was pretty simple. Can it go in the backyard? The answer is no. Based on that criteria, where else can we allow it to be placed?
I think you get into trouble when you give staff the responsibility just to make the judgment call.
What if staff goes out and does the field inspection, Staff goes out, does a field inspection, and brings their findings back to Brad, their boss, their director. You know, and then he can say, you know what, based on this certain criteria and my qualified staff member's investigation, you're right, this one, it will not work. So let's find a reasonable way to make this work. That's still staff discretion with his overlooking of it, without having to go through the whole process of appointing, you know, an appeals officer. Or, I don't know, I just think that we need to simplify.
So if I understand you correctly, what you're saying is you'd like to have the supervisor, and in this case Brad, be the last word, that when things are not quite where the zoning might have them on the books, that he could take the responsibility for having the last word.
I like that idea. He is a very logical, very reasonable person.
What happens when we get another person in that position?
We need to make sure that whoever we get in that position, hopefully we don't lose him, is the same. Very logical, very reasonable, very citizen-friendly, business-friendly, positive-minded.
Don't we already have that? I mean, really, don't we already have that, what Joe's saying? I think so.
We don't.
We don't? Brad can't make a logical decision the way the rules are now?
We of course, are under what we'd like to think is the black and white letter of the law. And we are told that, as I've been told for 30 years, that you cannot vary that law unless the law is written in a way that gives you some flexibility, which is, I think, sort of what we're talking about here. How we craft that ordinance, whether it's a blanket statement, which the city attorney is very uncomfortable with, or whether it applies to certain specific types of issues where there are measurable standards or criteria, is probably an exercise in creativity and something we would have to really sit down and hammer over. I guess we're not prepared to do that, but I have to, and I respect Joel's position on this, I guess we would have to really think long and hard how we do that and how we apply it. But I guess for tonight's purposes, is there an interest in the 10% reduction rule just as a starting point? Other communities have done that. They've been declared to be legal, and it gives some wiggle room in some instances. It's not going to satisfy everybody, but is there an interest in that? I think last time there was when we talked about it.
Can you give me some examples of where the 10% reduction rule would work?
And I'd like to look at it for both pre- and post-development. Let's say you build a shed, or you want to build a shed, and the required setback from the side lot line is 10 feet. But because of whatever circumstance, and we'll set up criteria, you want to be within 9 feet, all right? You can come to us, and staff can then say, okay, you meet this criteria, we will give you that 9-foot setback. Or after the fact, if you build it and made a mistake, your surveyor built it and it's 9 feet, not 10 feet, we then could allow that to exist. That 10% doesn't, to the visible eye, cause disruption with the intent and spirit of the code. And that's been, 5 and the 10% rule has been used by other communities. You actually did it with parking recently.
That's
That's
right.
one example of how you did that successfully. So we could look at how we could use that. It's not a panacea, okay? It's not going to help out a few people we know, but it's at least a start.
I don't think there's any problem with that.
It worked very well with the parking regulations. You know, so when you got specific numbers, I guess that would work.
Then I'm seeing nods on that. The next one, and let's take that trailer in the backyard situation. If we specifically had an ordinance on, as part of the residential parking requirement, and I'm not going to try to put you on the spot here, but if we said that the requirement is to park the trailer in the side of the rear when possible, and alternatively, if it's impractical or impossible,
As determined by?
has to be determined by physical constraints, by width,
you'd
by
have to get
whatever,
that.
then these alternative locations could apply. And is there room for that sort of thing, I guess, for us to do?
As a general concept, yes. However, I'd have to see the actual language, because if it does infringe upon the variance restrictions under 9-462 of the Arizona Revised Statutes, then that is a Board of Adjustment issue. And that's up to a hearing officer to decide based on Board of Adjustment criteria.
On the 10%?
No, the next one.
Oh.
Could you say that again, please, Joel?
A Board of Adjustment may not make any changes in the uses permitted in any zoning classification or zoning district, or make any change in the terms of the zoning ordinance, provided the restriction in this paragraph shall not affect the authority nor grant variances pursuant to this article. Number 2, grant a variance if the special circumstances applicable to the property are self-imposed by the property owner. So if you have situations where you want to change some language, for example, the trailer cannot be placed on the property because of special circumstances, I think you need to be a little more specific as to what the specific circumstances could be as a criteria to waive that particular issue.
See, I think that's where we're getting too difficult. I don't think that we need to get as specific. There's a stump in the way. There's a hole over here. There's a rock over here. That's why this is becoming so difficult. Where and if possible. If the landscape does not prohibit it, it doesn't apply.
That's an arbitrary statement, where and if. It could be where and if for some, but if you get a different hearing officer, which could happen, it could be, no, you're denied, because I don't see it, and it could be the same issue that the other person had 3 years earlier. You've got to have black and white definitions. And I think I told you this about 8 months ago when this first was brought up.
We need black and white guidelines.
Guidelines, well, if you're saying they're not enforceable, I mean, a guideline is not necessarily the law. It's just something that, hey, that's a good idea, but let's look this way this time.
So what you're saying, Joel, is we need specific criteria. So if we're looking at this particular, the same, let's just keep picking on this incident because it definitely has merit to be worked on. So we have a trailer, travel trailer, whatever, that's supposed to be in the backyard. It can't fit there because of the concave of the land or what have you. So we need some kind of a very specific statements that a planning person could look at and say, yes, you have a major problem, and yes, I see that it is one of those that is brought up here, so we could grant you a variance here.
Yes.
Is that what you're saying?
Yes, if it fits that particular category.
And we have a lot of that,
Your Honor.
in other ordinances.
Yes, I got, hang on a second. Go ahead. Yes, you want to say?
Yeah, I'm kind of, in a sense, kind of backing up a little bit. One of the things that I think that we need to look at, because of course, this incident on the trailer is on a large lot. There's a lot of large lots that don't fit the conventional rules of a property. It's not all flat and level where you can actually do it. There's some homes that were built, I'll say several years ago, that in actuality are too close to the road under our current setback requirements. And they would like to put a garage onto theirs. Well, they can't because they are 5 foot too close to the road. When the house was built, it was nothing but a dirt road. And these are things that I think that we need to look at our community as a whole, what we can do. There is some, it's not going to happen on every property, but there is some properties out there that won't meet the conventional, what we think of a property. There's some problems on it. Now, do we punish everybody because of it? Or do we try to find a way of working a situation where we can say, okay, this is how we can come up and do this. This is how we can correct the problem. I don't know exactly how to do it, whether it goes with a hearing officer, but I do believe that we need to have the ability to look at the property to make a decision. What is the intent of the rule, the intent of the law, is to have either a setback or have that trailer in the backyard. But if it's not possible because of the unfortunate thing is All our land's not the same out here. We didn't have bulldozers come in and flatten everything out. And I think we need to somehow work an area where we can do this.
Yeah.
Yes.
Robin, one of the concerns I have with the way you were suggesting it, with the certain specific criteria, if we do it that way, then we're going to have to go in and change every code we've got. Travel trailer, we got to go in and change the whole code to put specifics in there. Swimming pools, the whole code. Front yard fencing, rear yard fencing. It goes on and on and on. We would have to change and add that specific criteria and wording to every single code. And that could take years.
Right.
If we can do a blanket, flexibility, common sense, where practical type thing, and I know there's a way to do it. Well, there's a will, there's a way. If we have the attitude, the mentality of how can we work together to make this happen? How can we work together to help this situation? Instead of, no, we have to change the wording. We have to change the ordinance. We all know from sitting up here, myself the last 2.5 years, we watched the caretaker issue take 9 months, for that one to go through. Cargo containers, 11 months we've been working on this thing to go through now. Because we have to change the ordinance, change the details, change and add specifics. There's got to be a simpler way.
Well, I agree with you that we have some problems, but we also have to do this as legally as possible.
That's right.
Because otherwise, what you end up with is some people getting this that they want and some people not.
That's right.
So there has to be an approach that covers the entire community, not just those specific problems. And it has to be done in such a manner that it's legal.
That's right.
And that means that we have to also work with our city attorney to find a legal way to do this.
And unfortunately, I'm sorry.
Yes.
I mean, there's certain properties where people may have to realize they can't do it. I mean, if you live on a hillside, you may not be able to have a swimming pool. You can't build a skyscraper in a swamp because it'll sink. I mean, there's certain, if your property's mostly wash, you're not going to be able to do certain things, so.
And you buy the property knowing that.
Yes.
Or you should.
So,
there's
also that aspect. I mean, if we can help people, we can, but there's certain people that we won't be able to help.
And no circumstances would be looked at. If there is absolutely no place in this land to put a pool, then you know what, I'm sorry, you don't have the space to put in a pool. But if the only space they've got is their front yard, what if they want a pool? Most people deserve to have a pool too. But just because they don't have a backyard, there's a resident over here that's got 1.25 acres of land and their house sits 30 feet from the back property line. Next to their house is a travel trailer, a boat trailer, a horse trailer, a utility trailer, their car, their truck, their boat, their motorcycle, all sitting next to their house. They have no room behind their house, and they have 1 acre of beautiful land in front of them that they can't do anything with it because they can't put their RV in the front yard. They can't put their swimming pool in the front yard. It's wasted land because of the ordinances and the way we wrote them.
Because of the way someone built that house.
Yeah,
that's
true.
That was a choice that someone made to build the house, and that was the choice someone made to purchase that house.
Are we back to buyer beware?
Not necessarily, but there's some instances where, you know, I mean, common sense is common sense.
The owner?
You know, it's not. I mean,
I ran the council to try to help people out, but I do not know how to just grant someone a magic wand to where they can make a discretionary change when it comes to city code. Do you think you can come up with something for this that might be easier, user-friendly or something? Some type of writing for this code? I mean, here we're starting with one code, but you're going to start, you got to start somewhere. I just don't see without changing the code, you're not going to allow the staff member to go up there and make a decision and be more lenient. You know, an officer was lenient, 10 feet away from the property, put a dog out of misery, and now we're, you know, in trouble, so. Wow. That was
We can
good
try.
judgment, too.
We can try, and we'll bring you back something if we have directed.
Your Honor. Yes. I would like to follow up on the Vice Mayor's point, and I think it's a timely illustration. There are many who might suggest to you that it would be good common sense for an officer who was injured pursuing a criminal who has an animal in pain and in suffering not to have to drag that dog out to the middle of a center line of a road so that it can be put out of its pain. There would be many who would say that that would be the epitome of good common sense. And yet, there would be others who would say that that may be a technical violation of the law, that it is corruption. So the notion that what is good common sense puts staff in the middle, not just of a judgment call, but indeed of a political process. Okay? It has the potential to put staff in the middle of politics. You have the goal that you're trying to achieve is a good one. And any of us as citizens and customers want what you're striving for. As a resident of this community, I would want that. And you also want to know that people are treated equitably, that equals receive equal treatment, that there's a sense of fairness and fair play. And I think the people that spoke up tonight are asking for fairness, okay? You treat citizens inside the city one way and outside, it's a different set of rules. That's a fair request. That's appropriate. One might argue that it competes with common sense. So I think what you're finding is there's a lot of complexity here. And I just want to affirm, I think your goal is good. And I think when we rattle off common sense, we're all for that. But I think, to use the illustration that the Vice Mayor raised, it can also be challenging. So,
Your Honor.
And I think you should direct the city attorney to fix it.
Yeah, I would say, you know, I don't know.
Councilmember Severs?
Our staff, our code enforcement officers, they practice flexibility every single day. They practice discretion every single day. Right now, illegally. If they can do it every day, we need to find a way to make it legal. And I know they do it every day. They give time frame extensions. If we can figure out a way to write that a code enforcement officer has flexibility in time of prosecution, then we need to be able to find out a way that they have flexibility based on circumstances. And in doing so, I just ask you, please keep it simple.
I don't want to prolong this discussion anymore, so
I don't want to go into
comment,
this
Your
discussion
Honor.
anymore, because there's no compromise. There seems to be no... Thanks, Brad. I think you've done everything you could do.
All right, well, we've heard that at least a couple of the suggestions there seems to be some consensus on. We will take a shot at trying to deal with some of these others and I guess report back at a future date. But let me just remind you all.
Actually, we haven't been directed to do anything.
Oh, I'm jumping the gun again on this, aren't I? Thank you. Thank you.
Yes.
To address to the attorney, I'm unsure about the hearing officer. Can you be specific about the role that a hearing officer would play? I mean, would they be a go-between between the, not a go-between, but an interim between some kind of problem with planning and the Board of Adjustment? Is that what we're talking
Mr.
about?
Mayor, Councilmember Parker, what happens is under the statute, the hearing officer becomes the Board of Adjustment for that particular moment. They take the place of the Board of Adjustment. That's if the council set it up that way.
Okay.
And then if someone didn't like their decision, that can be appealed to the Board of Adjustment. And then if they didn't like that decision, they have to go to court. And once again, once you hit 100,000, you can either become your own Board of Adjustment, or that Board of Adjustment's decision would get appealed to the council.
Your Honor, Joel, what flexibility, what ability to exercise common sense does the hearing officer have as contrasted with the Board of Adjustment? Or is there any difference?
It would be the same analysis of a particular case, like a variance. Are there special circumstances? Are they self-imposed? Those are the kind of things. It's something that the law and the Board of Adjustment hears that every time they see a case. So it's the same analysis that the board would have.
Your Honor?
Yes.
Another question then. Are we talking, Brad, is this a proposal that was brought up for monetary reasons? In other words, are the fees to take a case to the Board of Adjustments such that a hearing officer would be an interim step?
Well, this was put on the list because we were brainstorming possible ideas as to how you could work with variances and waivers and exemptions. It wasn't on the list because we felt it necessarily needed to be or it was warranted to be there. But some communities had used that, especially if there's a lot of workload issues. Could this position be a reduced cost option? Possibly, but that's a whole other discussion on, who is this person? What's the administrative cost for this? How many times do they meet? Those things would have to be part of an ordinance that is brought back to you. We haven't thought that through yet.
And do we have an extremely heavy workload on our...
Let me say to you that we're sitting here spending probably now about a half hour talking about something that arguably is broke. And I'll remind you what I did in December. I don't see that we have chronic zoning issues or problems. We have a handful of items that go to the Board of Adjustment each year. That's a healthy system. There are people that are a square peg in a round hole for whatever reason, whether they didn't understand when they bought the property or situations have changed, but that's what the Board of Adjustment's there for if they want to take advantage of it. We have a handful each year.
So we don't have a heavy load?
We do not have a heavy load.
Okay. So we really have no need for...
Some years you do have a heavy load. I remember maybe 3 to 4 years ago, we had a Board of Adjustment meeting every month. But this year, I think, this past 8 months, I think we've had two hearings, and it's once a month.
Your Honor?
Yes.
How costly is a Board of Adjustment appeal?
Well, we just raised the fee on that. You know better than I do. In that letter that we copied you on for the cost, was that there was a $500 advertising fee, plus was it $300?
For somebody to appeal to the Board of Adjustment, right now, we're looking at a $750 fee.
Right.
Some people cannot afford that. And somebody who has circumstances that are beyond their control cannot handle a $750 fee for something that is beyond their control, that they had nothing to do with. And to have somebody in the middle say, you know what, based on certain circumstances, you're right. Based on the facts at hand, you're right. This needs to be taken care of right now at this level, instead of being forced to cost a lot of money, a lot of time, a lot of stress to go to the next level.
in the ordinance, there could be a waiver provision as to the fee to apply. There is another fee, and that's the $500, and that's for publishing, and I don't think that would be waivable.
Statutory.
500 is statutory.
No, the cost for the applicant to pay the publishing fee is statutory, and that fee, it varies depending on the size of the legal ad.
Now, is that for a rezoning?
That's for any publication that's done on behalf of a private citizen. So we have no discretion in that whatsoever.
That is considerably higher than I thought it was because of Board of Adjustment.
So to have somebody that would have the authority to issue a variance based on certain circumstances.
They still have to advertise it.
That's correct.
Kathy, isn't that $500 deposit, and then they get back the actual
That's
cost if it's less than that?
They pay whatever the amount is. If the publication is less, they get money returned. If the publication is more, they have to pay the difference. Generally, I think those ads, if I recall seeing them, they're short, and they don't cost $500.
And then they go before the Board of Adjustment, who in the past have been by the book, and they say, nope, sorry, the book says this. Thanks for your money.
That's where you get your list, and you look at your members, and you see how they vote, and you determine if you feel you want that member back on when it comes time to reappoint them. It's important to appoint people with your philosophies on this board.
Isn't this a quasi
Yes, it is.
legal body? I mean, they have to follow the statutes.
Yes.
They don't have that choice.
It's a quasi-judicial body.
Whatever the statute says, they must follow by law.
There is flexibility in that.
There's 3-2 votes all the time in that.
There's flexibility in that as well. I witnessed it, where the certain circumstances that applied would allow that person a variance, and they said, no, this is what the book says.
Well, there is some flexibility under some of their powers. For example, a Board of Adjustment shall hear and decide appeals in which allege there is an error in an order, requirement, or decision made by the zoning administrator in the enforcement of a zoning ordinance adopted pursuant to this article. Number 2, hear and decide appeals for variances from terms of the zoning ordinance only if, because of special circumstances applicable to the property, including its size, shape, topography, location, or surroundings, the strict application of the zoning ordinance will deprive such person of privileges enjoyed by other property of the same classification in the same zoning district.
So right there, just apply to what we're
So it's
talking about.
there, it's in the law.
Just put that right in.
Well, that's what a hearing officer could do if you so decide that a hearing officer now would just be the one who decides this.
That's right. And they wouldn't have to pay the $750 and go through all the waiting period and go through the whole quasi-judicial process.
Well, there is some staff cost to it. So if you make it 0, it would be possibly gifting. It could be attacked as a gift. There is
No,
some
but you're saying if
administrative
we get a
cost.
hearing officer, they still have to do the $500 mailing and all that, or no?
No, I do not
No.
believe so. That'd be an administrative hearing.
Yeah.
But there is still some cost in looking at the application. There is a processing that the government has to pay.
Yeah, but it could be considerably less.
It would be, it probably would not be $250 in actual time spent. But then again, it depends on who you have do it.
I believe a year ago it was $90.
And there was a review of the fees, as I recall.
And it went from $90 to $750. Something's
Well,
wrong with
actually, what happened was, it went from $90 to $250, and then it was determined that the publication fees were not being collected. That's why they added on that fee. And they should have been collected all of these years.
Yeah.
So that's really what happened.
It's been in the code for years.
Other cities do it.
Can I just throw something out, Your Honor? Under the tax code, we're required to have a provision for a hearing officer. And in that instance, if a taxpayer wants to appeal the decision of an audit, they can go to an independent hearing officer. And what we do is each year in the budget, I put some money aside for us to pay an outside hearing officer to hear that case. And again, if the taxpayer's not satisfied, they can then go to tax court. So that, maybe there's a parallel process there that can be looked at, and we don't have the same obligation to charge. There's no publication cost, but it's an independent person that comes in and charges an hourly rate.
It's outside of staff.
It's outside of staff, and we would be using a tax expert from another community, and there may be an ability to have staff from another community serve in that function. And I'm just guessing, maybe they would run in the other direction and say, no. But it's something to take a look at.
If you go down that route, Your Honor, I would strongly encourage you to use someone outside the organization. It depoliticizes it. We don't have scenarios where council members coming in and saying to the Development Services Director, look, this is what common sense is, and you need to exercise it. It's third party, and it keeps the administration of council law not political, and I think that's important in the long run.
Yeah, it's not.
You were thinking of that 25 minutes ago, Kathy.
Well, I'm sorry, I'm not feeling well, but it wouldn't be like, it's something we already have in another section of the code, so maybe we can just borrow from that.
I would worry about what community we would pick somebody from.
That was my suggestion.
Well, let's worry about that later. Let's give direction to staff.
Why would you worry?
Why would I worry?
With the program.
You get someone from Phoenix, you're going to worry? You want somebody from Chandler?
We have somebody from Scottsdale that has no idea what our community is like. We want them controlling what our citizens are doing.
Well,
I would
you
worry
got
about that.
what you just asked for 40 minutes.
That's fine, and I'm saying I would just be concerned about who we pick, and I'd want to be careful
Well,
about
let's
it.
find a program first.
I agree.
That's what we're trying to do, is give direction to staff to work up a program.
I agree.
Work up something.
So let's do it.
Let's worry about this stuff later.
Does somebody have any direction for staff? Or Brad's standing there getting tired?
Brad, would you like to give direction for us?
Would you like to give yourself direction? No.
I'll try it.
Okay.
And anyone can amend this as I go, because I move that the following direction be given to staff regarding administrative zoning discretion, that they look into the 10% reduction, and that they look into a variety of possibilities for a possible hearing officer, and that they look into any possibility of making the code more flexible.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Moved and second. Roll call.
Councilmember Surdy?
Yes.
Councilmember Severs?
Yes.
Councilmember Deeds?
Yes.
Councilmember Wilson?
Yes.
Councilmember Barker?
As vague as it is, yes.
Vice Mayor Eck?
Crystal clear, yes.
Mayor Itzlaka?
Yes.
Unanimous, Your Honor.
Direction to staff on community outreach plan 2008-2009.
What?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I was before you last evening to discuss a potential council community outreach plan for the next 2 years, and I provided you a series of potential avenues for several different types of groups that you might want to meet with. In your discussion last night, a couple great ideas were brought forth, including the possibility of council going and sitting at a booth at an event such as the one that's coming up for Lost Dutchman. We looked into it, and we will be having a booth. If we need additional space, we can make that available. And if you wanted to do that, the Lost Dutchman days are coming up in February, and it's the 24th and 25th. Friday and Saturday would probably be the best days.
I think it's 23rd.
Or 23rd and 24th. It'd be a Friday and a Saturday in the afternoon, possibly from like 12 to 4. We could have Pat Brenner or someone from our office, schedule that with each of you to pick an hour or two, whatever it was that we would decide on tonight to do that. And in the future, if other events came up, that would be another way to provide community outreach. And before I go into each of the groups, I just wanted to make sure I got all your ideas out. And then another thing was trying to decide if, because there were so many potential meetings each quarter, you can kind of have a vision of how often you might be able to get out other than your regular meeting nights that you have already. And so we did want to make you aware that Mayor Insulaco will be attending the CAG Legislative Day, which is coming up on February 28th. It's a half-day event, and Assistant City Manager Brian Powell and I are planning to go down with Mayor Insulaco for CAG Legislative Day, and so that is another avenue in which you discussed last night about meeting with your legislators. And another event that's coming up to consider is at your next meeting, the planning department is going to be asking you to pick a Saturday in March to go for an all-day tour of master planned communities. So that's another event that you're going to need to be involved in. So I just wanted to throw that out so that you know what's coming up the next couple months. And then there was discussion on the first joint council meeting with Florence and Queen Creek, and Florence had invited everyone to go and have a joint meeting. And so if you were going to do that, you might consider that a little bit later, possibly in May or June, because of these other events that are going on as well. So with that, the first group that we were looking at were your actual boards and commissions that serve our community and how you wanted to meet with them.
Your Honor.
Yes.
I would like to see something that is issue-based and has a time specific on it.
Yeah. I think we, yeah.
Yeah.
I think we should definitely have a time frame, and we should probably start at the top. I think planning and zoning is usually where we normally would start. That's the only board or commission I think I've ever met with was planning and zoning, but we haven't met in some time. So I wouldn't even know every board member's name. So, but I think we don't need an 8-hour meeting. I think we need about maybe a 2 or 3 hour meeting myself. I don't know how others feel. 2 hours, if we're.
Yeah. I'd like to see us have a meeting here with us and all of the boards and commissions. If it has to be a time limit, that's fine, but I'd like for it to be all of them at once here in this room.
Mayor, Councilmember Severs, all the boards and commissions, and have a joint meeting
Yes.
here? Okay.
And if we could go over before time what the topics of discussion would be real nice.
Okay.
Is this big enough and then the public would not be there?
They would have to be there.
It has to be a public, it's a public meeting. It has to
Wondering if
be.
this facility is big enough for that.
I would suggest probably the multi-gen, it's,
I don't know how we're going to get into issues, though, that we might want to with P&Z and that if we have all our boards and commissions in one room at one time.
That's a good way for all of the boards and commissions to see what is the attitude, what is the goals, the visions, all at once, so we all get on the same page.
On the basketball court would be the best place.
Basketball.
Your Honor.
Yes.
How many people would that entail? Do you have any idea at all?
About 80 board and commission.
About 80 board and commission members, plus the city council, plus the public, of course.
Don't we
I
have
don't know
some-
that we would
We'd
accomplish
have to do it
much.
the multi-gen, wouldn't we?
Don't we have some members in our, on one board?
Mm-hmm.
And we still have 80.
No, that's total.
Oh.
So take 20 off of that and make it 60?
We could do it here, we could reserve seating for them and left over for the public.
But what do we,
What's our capacity?
it just seems to me that we would not accomplish much unless it is you want to just have a lecture session. This is what we believe and therefore.
There's no
I mean,
way you're
it
going to
doesn't-
have back and forth.
There's no give and take when you've got that many people.
Too many.
Your Honor,
Yes.
why would the joint meeting with Florence and Queen Creek be so late? I see that as being more important. The sooner we would get on the same pages with them, I think that more benefits would come from that.
I agree.
Yeah, I think so too. That definitely should be moved up.
Yeah. If Mayor Rankin is all right with that. Since he decided to host it, I suppose he should be able to name the date.
Now, their meeting night, their Tuesday night meeting is the same as ours. They don't have a work session. So we could work it on one of our off meeting nights.
Whatever.
I don't know about what nights Queen Creek are, but their nights coincide with ours, so that won't be a problem there.
If Queen Creek wants to go, they're going to have to go on Tuesday night.
Whoa. Extend the friendly hand.
Well, I think actually this
If
board
us
and
and Florence
commission-
do it on Tuesday, then we're going to have to.
No, that is a good idea.
I think it's too much with all the people.
I agree.
We could have a person like Pat Brenner actually run the meeting, and each board or commission would have their certain time to discuss issues. That way it would be organized, and each board and commission would be able to have communication with us.
So they'd get about 3 minutes each. That'd be over 3 hours.
You know, we could
If
be
they all
realistic,
wanted to speak.
About the only board that we really have a whole lot of contact with, or I wouldn't say problems, interactions, is planning and zoning. Everybody else is basically, I wouldn't say on their own, but
Well, we obviously have some interest in the Board
Parks
of
and Rec.
Adjustment,
Mhm.
Parks and Rec,
Library.
with all of the park projects. You know, there are many boards that we
Yeah,
really
but-
have serious
but to
input.
have them all at one time.
And that's what I mean. I would prefer to do them individually myself. I think that way that you can actually have a conversation, actually speak back and forth, rather than almost a call to the public forum. If you've got that many people, I think you end up with very little real communication.
If we work on our own.
now in a case like this, the public wouldn't be able to speak. They could attend, but
Right.
there won't be
More time to interact with them.
any input from the public, right?
I don't know.
It depends what you want. I mean, if you want to structure it so you can have public input, you can certainly do that. You could have a work session type where, no, the public can't speak, but they can come and they can watch and they can listen. Or you could have it so that they can speak on any issue, or you can just have the call of the public, too. You can structure this any way you want.
I would structure this as a meeting between us and our boards and commissions. This one isn't about the public. This is
Yeah.
about our boards and commissions and the council getting together as one.
Because if you get a lot of,
And I say we go meet over in the old exec building,
The old council chamber?
the old council chamber,
well,
That's half
yeah,
the
the
size
old
of this
exec.
That's small.
Well, I think
that's
that,
awful small.
that causes problems. I went to a Park and Rec meeting about a month ago, and they didn't expect 65 or 80 people, and it was rather difficult, and the sound system wasn't working. I wouldn't recommend that. In fact, they're having theirs tomorrow night here because of that reason. So I suggest you have it here.
That's because they want to build ball
Is it here?
parks
Or we can
over
do it
by
here.
Silly
It'd be
Mountain.
more formal here. It'd be more of a meeting instead of a casual conversation if we had it here.
But you have so much more room over there than Multi-Gen. We had our
I
regional,
don't care.
we had our regional
Big
PAG
place.
meeting over there, and how many people were there, Brian? About that, and it was very comfortable. And the way they fixed the tables, it could be very formal or informal, whichever way you want. At least you got room.
Are we still talking about?
So
the
Ruth, what are
entire-
you looking for
all
tonight? Are
of
we
them?
looking at each and every thing? Are we planning the next 2 years tonight?
No.
Well, we don't have to plan the next 2 years tonight, but I would like a little bit of direction on how you want to meet with these different groups. And that's what you're working on right now.
Let's just start with the boards and the commissions, I think, and meeting with Florence and Queen Creek.
I agree.
I think those should be our priorities maybe right now. I don't know.
Your Honor, I think that you can both meet with commissions one-on-one and have a little more in-depth dialogue and meet with all your boards and commissions. Number 3 down here is having an annual event with all the boards and commissions.
That's a social event.
You could use that as an opportunity to say thank you. You could use that as an opportunity to express vision, goals for the year ahead, 3 and 5 year goals, that kind of thing, and provide an overview and have some level. It would be maybe a little more one-way communication from the council to all those groups. It'd be an opportunity to express your appreciation for their service to the community and to the organization and so forth. So I'm simply offering that you could do both.
Your
Makes a lot of sense.
Yes,
Yeah,
it does.
I would prefer to see us do that as a recognition of their hard work and so forth, to join all the boards and have some kind of an event that would allow us to recognize all their work, because they do work hard. They work long hours. They read huge volumes just like we do. In fact, they read them before we do most of the time. So I think that would be very nice, and I would also like to see us schedule individual meetings as a roundtable type thing where we could actually converse with these people.
Well, does somebody want to give Ruth some direction?
Well, I think didn't you want to go on with some of the...
Oh, I thought you just wanted to get, okay.
The neighborhoods, I had a thought on that. Why couldn't we, the neighborhood groups and the civic groups, why couldn't we as a council extend an invitation to one of those groups every council meeting? Extend an invitation to one group, honor that group, recognize them, that they are here, and ask them to give us a very short presentation of what their goals or whatever they would like to give us, to let us know what they're all about. And if we did that at every council meeting, that's 2 council meetings a month, I mean, we hit a lot of organizations in a year. And I know that the mayor and several other people here get to a lot of the neighborhood meetings during the day. And I think that would be a really nice thing to do for those organizations, myself.
Mayor, Councilmember Barker, would you want that, you've said a council meeting, so we could have sort of in their presentations and discussions, possibly
And-
maybe a
and
named
presentations.
group that was
Right.
invited.
And if we have a approximate number of how many people are going to come, we could have a certain section
Reserve their seats.
reserved for them. So one's not sitting here, one's not sitting there, they'd all be together.
And the external meetings with other city councils and neighboring communities and possibly the County Board of Supervisors, we might possibly be able to do something that we end up doing with Queen Creek and Florence, and kind of take one, see how that goes, and then we could always change that if something didn't work, but we could try and do one first and then see how the council reacts to the first one.
Yeah.
The only other question I have also is the legislators from our districts. Again, I mentioned that Mayor Slocco will be meeting with them for CAG Legislative Day, and that's done on an annual basis. However, there was also the potential of possibly inviting certain
I think that's
legislators to our
important, maybe
meetings.
not right away, but just to get us to get to know them a little bit better, and a casual sit-down, kickback.
I'd also like
You
to
know,
know what's
round
going
table
on.
type.
I'd like to know
It'd be
what's
nice
going
to
on
know
with the
what, let them
legislature.
do the talking for a change.
That's,
Senator Rios came once and he said he comes by invitation only usually because he has so many towns and
Right.
cities in his district. So you could
Yeah,
invite him.
Sure. I think that would be a wonderful idea. I'd like to see our legislators, one at a time,
I said Senator.
to come and address the council and tell us what's going on down there, what's affecting us, because the public needs to know what's going on a state level to affect us. I mean, that's information that everybody needs. Sometimes we get blamed for it.
And Ruth, did we cover school board, fire board? Did they want to meet with anyone the first?
Well,
couple
I was
months?
going to just try and just ask, we had a timeline, and we kind of just threw every single group that we could think of for the next couple years, and that included other boards and commissions such as the fire district, the sewer
I
district.
think in the future, I think right now we've got something to start with and to work with.
So don't schedule any in the next few months with those folks.
Well, I mean, we've got,
We have all our boards and commissions that you want to meet with.
are we meeting with them in all of
What do
them?
you think in like March for that?
Or
Well, let's say the when question.
We have a hard enough time.
For
with
which?
the other meetings as it is.
For the entire
Let's have
group
one
as a
big
thank
meeting.
you?
Well, when you get direction, let us know.
What?
Kind of when, which one you want to do. What is your tempo going to be for the individual group?
I understand. I think June would be a good idea for the thank you.
4 meetings?
Myself, but, okay, gotcha.
Mr. Mayor, is there a motion pending?
I'll try a motion.
I don't know.
I mean,
I
it's gonna
will.
be
I've
like-
got one.
Just so moved.
If you don't.
Robin's got one.
Hit it, I don't.
I move the following direction be given to staff regarding community outreach plan for 2008 and 9, that we meet with the boards and commissions on an individual basis, that we schedule one per month,
Yeah.
and that be a public meeting, and that it be no call to the public, that they are welcome to be here and welcome to listen, but that's a time when the council and those boards need to be able to converse. And that we do an annual, or at least 1 year, and we'll try it and see if it becomes annual, thank you for our boards and commissions in June. Okay, I'm not getting anything.
No, June's all right.
Oh, righty then. And the reason I said June is because most of their commissions at this point are over in July, correct? So that still keeps them, the people who have been serving there. And I would think that the plans for that would have to come later. It would be very hard to get into specifics, but the when is there. That we do this first dinner with Florence and Queen Creek as soon as Mayor Rankin feels that is when he wants to do that. And from that point, we give direction after that occurs, deciding what we're going to do, that we invite different neighborhoods and civic organizations one at a time to our meetings and ask them to give us a overview and recognize them, that we invite our legislators to speak one at a time. I know they're very busy, and so it would be their schedule, not ours. Either a Monday meeting would probably be best, but it's, again, up to them, dependent upon the legislature. And I believe that we left the rest out there for a while. Is that correct? Did we, is there something missing?
That's about it.
Second. Do I have a second?
Wait a minute.
Oh,
Excuse me, I may not be finished.
Just clarification, and when you meet with your individual boards and commissions, you'd like that done at a work session here?
Yes.
How many boards and commissions are there? There are 8?
No, it's more than that. 6, 7, 8.
10, 12?
I have 10, and on my list, I had included the smaller ones that only have like 3 members. Maybe we
I was
would
gonna
have
say, we
more
might
than
be able
one.
And we might be able to combine some of those,
Correct.
too. I think that the larger ones need to be individuals, but because we don't want more than, say, 15 of us altogether. And that would include, all the big commissions are 7, right?
Yes.
Yes, so, and we're 7, so that's 14 of us, and that takes care of that. But the ones that are smaller, it seems like we could combine, 2 or 3.
Construction board appeals and says.
Right.
Isn't there a way that we could combine like 2 meetings? Like we vote for them when we appoint them? We do this many groups in one night, and the next night we do this many groups. So we're looking at 12 different groups. If we're going to meet with one a month, it's going to take us a year to meet with these people. By the time we meet with them, some of them are going to be gone, some of them are going to be new, some of them are going to be old. If we could meet with these people right away, then everybody could start getting on the same page a lot faster.
Some will still be new and some will still be old, no matter what time of year we meet with them.
But getting on the same page a lot faster.
Well, you said there was 10, and we're going to combine
we're gonna
probably
combine
at least 4 of those, I would think.
And to get the ones that we really need to.
We're really only going to have 5 or 6.
Planning and zoning, parks and rec.
We'll get this finished by June or July.
Okay, so it's been seconded.
Moved and seconded, roll call.
Councilmember Severs,
Yeah.
Vice Mayor Eck,
Yes.
Councilmember Wilson,
Yes.
Councilmember Surtee,
Yes.
Councilmember Deeds,
Yeah.
Councilmember Blocker.
Yes.
Mayor Slaughter.
Yes.
Unanimous.
Direction to staff on cargo containers.
Brad, before you begin, may I say something? Your Honor?
Yes.
Thank you. I just want to, I have about 6 words running in my head. I want to explain why I ask that the cargo container ordinance be reconsidered. I asked for it because I felt when we voted to retain the original ordinance, we forgot several people that we talked about in meeting after meeting that we all, every person up here said, yes, they need that. We forgot people that had emergency situations where they needed to store their household goods on a very temporary basis. We left them out when we went back to the original ordinance. We forgot the home contractor, who does not have the same privilege as the big-time developer does, and that person cannot store their materials or their equipment like a regular contractor can. We forgot that person, too, and that was the reason why I brought this back. And I would just like that to be on the record.
I put that in the motion, but I don't know. It's been so long.
All right, our job as staff here is to facilitate, help you facilitate a decision on this. We have purposefully not editorialized. What we provided here for you is a menu of choices to help us to draft an ordinance that can come back to you, target date of February 19th, for you to take action one way or the other on this. We've tied this exemption on enforcement to that February 19th date as well. At the last meeting we talked about this. We talked about a few things that I think are very important, and I'm just going to comment on the wording that hopefully you've had a chance to look at. Remember, the idea here is for you to have an opportunity to decide whether you want to introduce cargo containers to residential and non-residential areas on February 19th. Our goal is to try to get from you enough information to draft an ordinance that's your ordinance, recommended, not our staff ordinance, and get in a position to resolve this thing. On the question of aesthetics and location, from the last meeting, here's what we got out of it. That the ordinance should state that cargo containers should be located at the side or the rear of properties if physically and practically possible. They should be earth tone in color, that if they're visible to adjacent property or from the public street, that we would have the property owner landscape them so within 5 years of growth, 75% of the container is opaque or invisible to the public. We as staff would help provide planting schemes so they don't have to go to a landscape architect, so they don't have to get irrigation systems, but plants that would grow and help to provide that natural buffer. We also provided an opportunity that if they don't choose to have a natural buffer, they could put up a structural fence, or they could attach I think one gentleman was talking earlier, siding to it, but if they do that, they may need to get a building permit, all right? And should they not be able to locate them in the side or the rear of the property, and this is where I'm going to ask Joel again to comment on, you had suggested that staff work with them to create an alternate location. The city attorney is suggesting, again, he's uncomfortable with that and thinks there needs to be a remedy because it's tied to a setback in this language that goes to the Board of Adjustment. Okay. Should we just talk about that for a second before we go on to these other issues? Does that represent what you wanted us to put with respect to this?
I like the way you wrote it. The wording that you put down, I liked.
But I have to defer to the city attorney. If he's uncomfortable with that ability to do that, I guess I want Joel to have an opportunity to talk to that.
And was there a where in that, or where in the city?
Where we put these?
Not yet.
No, that's coming up.
Comes later.
The sole question for me, I think, is whether, well, there's an overlap here. You have a city code ordinance. This would go into probably Chapter 9 if you come under property maintenance. And then it would overlap onto zoning if there's a setback issue, if a setback has to be waived. That'd be a variance issue. So there's the overlap. And once again, how do you resolve that? That would be currently a Board of Adjustment issue. If the zoning administrator says, no, you can't put it there, it becomes a Board of Adjustment issue on the setback variance. So that issue's still there. I don't think a code officer can say, yeah, you can keep it there. Yeah, you're in the setback, but that's okay. It doesn't bother me, no one's complaining. And is that common sense? Well, to some people that might be.
I don't think anybody ever mentioned us allowing them to be put in the setbacks.
So let's say we eliminate the word setback from this definition and just say it must be to the rear or the side of the property if physically practical.
Within the buildable area.
Well, then that ties it again to zoning.
Then you get into setbacks. And you can't be so vague. If it goes in the setback, you have to get a variance. That's the current law.
If it's within the buildable area, then it's not in the setbacks.
That's correct.
Right. So I'm not saying to allow them within the setbacks. It has to be within the buildable area.
But if they don't have enough room,
then it can't go there.
Then your argument comes in, well, no, they should be allowed to put it there because it's a common sense approach. I mean, that's your argument.
I never said that.
Well, no, I think you did.
Then
Okay, so that seems to be a stickling point for at least one city council member. But generally speaking, I think we've reflected what we talked about. So now maybe the tougher questions. What I've done is again, given you a menu of choices here, and let's just run down them, I guess, and unless there's a better way of doing this to try to, and this is going to be painful to some degree here, and let's start with minimum lot size. Is there a part of the city that these should be allowed, and other parts of the city they should not? We've suggested if you wanted to limit them to the larger lot zoning districts, which are GR and R143, usually that's about 1.25 acres and greater. Is that the direction you wanted to go? Do you want to allow them anywhere in the city? This is residentially again now we're talking about.
have at it.
Okay, I'm going to speak up. I think in the R143 and the GR, the larger lots, that they definitely should be allowed. And the reason why I say the R143 is because we've already zoned some property that is slightly under 1.25 acres, and we've zoned them R143s, and they are still in the large lot area.
Your Honor?
Yes?
What is the smallest lot size in the GR zoning? Brad?
1.25 acres is the minimum lot size.
Which ones were we talking about a few months back that were 20,000 square feet, that were just over half acre?
Right.
Those were some of the GR zoned areas, weren't they?
Now, the way, if you look at the zoning, GR is acre and a quarter, R143 minimum acre and a quarter, R143 MH acre and a quarter, and then you go to the CR1s, CR1 MH, CR2, all 20,000 square feet. So you take a pretty good leap from acre and a quarter down to 20,000, which is about a half acre.
I was thinking that there were a few properties that were still GR that were that 20,000.
Well, there may be some, as the council member said, there may be some GR properties that are zone GR but are undersized. So if you say that this would apply to a GR zone property or an R143 property without having a minimum lot size, then that person with 1 acre in GR could have a cargo container.
Acre and a quarter.
Well,
Well, no, but you could go 20,000 square feet, you could be right downtown in a residential.
That's right, so. The other option is GR or R143 and at least an acre and a quarter in size. That doesn't get to where you want to be, I think.
You wanted to go at least 1 acre?
Because
1 acre, if you're going to go acre and a quarter, you might as well go 1 acre.
Well, why not go, 30 square feet then?
Because
A quarter of an acre off of an acre and a quarter?
Is it gross or net?
I wish I could tell you today how many undersized lots there are in GR and R143. That might help you to understand if there's just a handful, it's not a big issue. I don't know that right here now. We could get that before the 19th.
The whole subdivision between Delaware and Rennick, where the liquor store is off of Superstition, that whole subdivision is about 7,000 square foot lots, and the whole subdivision is GR.
Yep.
Right. Couldn't we go with the GR and R143s of a minimum 1 acre to catch a lot of those horse properties that use these items? I mean, would that be practical?
I believe so. I believe so, because we did, just inside of 6 months ago, we did 3 lots. And they're all they're just slightly over an acre in size.
All right.
Just put the stipulation in there.
Got it. All right, let's move on then.
Okay.
If I'm moving on and I haven't captured your thoughts, please highlight them. Maximum number of containers in residential areas. I have 1, 2, I'm sorry.
Are we going to do industrial and business?
Yep, I'll get to that one.
Turn your page.
I'll add more pain. Maximum number of containers in residential areas, 1, 2, or 3 per property.
I have a suggestion on that, if you don't want to hear it.
Yes, I do too.
I was thinking 1 up to 40-footer or 2 20-footers. It's just an idea.
And that's what I had said, that, you could do, and what I've seen is a couple of short ones in different areas on the property, and they're staying well underneath, so you could have 2, but we could give a maximum length that you could have.
I have, what I have on is 1 40-footer or 2 20-footers. All right, I'm going to move on. I'm going to put that down on my list. Moving on to maximum length of container. Well, those tied together, so I'm sorry. Going on number 5, maximum width. If you go with the 8-foot, which is the width of what I think you're talking about, the mini mobile type, the idea here is if you declare a width, then you restrict other types of containers that may not fit the profile that you want. You're limiting then the world of containers to a certain size. I think 8 foot is the standard size for these types of things.
Depending on which company you go with, there are quite a few of them out there that are 10 by 25.
10 foot wide?
Yeah.
All right.
I mean, there's a few. I just...
All right, so we have the 8 and the 10 foot option.
I don't care which one.
10. Okay, so that's not a big issue to you? All right. Maximum height, typical mobile mini again is about 8 foot 6 inches. Railroad car is going to be taller.
8 foot 6 is fine.
8'6". All right. Duration of use. Temporary use, which would be for what we talked about, emergency situation, construction situations where someone's working on a house under a building permit, or permanent use.
Both.
I agree with both.
All right.
Well, wait a minute. When you say duration of use in residential areas, I mean, are we still going back to item 1 or 2 that says the size of the residential area?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Now, in the case of a building permit being issued on a property, emergency use, that would apply maybe to other properties, okay? You have to understand that's a separate category. It's a temporary use. We may treat that differently than a 1 acre plus property. All right, we'll have to think that one through a little bit. But I have both of those checked off for the moment. Container type. I mean, this is just not the universe, but the potential types of containers that you could actually see out here, going from the mobile mini to a retrofitted wooden shipping container, a railroad car, a semi-trailer. You heard a couple people tonight.
Can I clarify something on those, Brad?
Sure.
I don't think that any of us wanted a retrofitted mobile home or a travel trailer as a storage container, am I correct? No. And wooden shipping crates, I don't think we've ever talked about those. But a mobile mini type container, semi-trailers that have been removed off of their axles, those are all removable because they are shipping containers. Semi-trailers, mobile mini types are all the same. The railroad cars, I've never seen those. I've never talked about or discussed the railroad cars. The detached truck boxes, such as the ones that John Kantowski had, the Ryder trucks, those are smoother, cleaner, better looking products than the mobile mini type. So I wouldn't mind seeing the detached truck boxes as long as they're treated the same as the others, like we talked about. The semi-trailers and the mobile minis, like I said, I consider those all as one.
Okay.
Yes, no?
Anybody else?
All right. Now, moving on to the businesses, many of the same sorts of questions will be asked. It's a slightly different aesthetic standard here. Again, the earth tone, that in this instance, we heard that if it's visible to the public or the neighbor, that they are to install a minimum 8-foot-high structural screening. They have to get approval from Development Services to do that. That may require a building permit. It does say here that they shall be located in a manner that minimizes public view, and that the Development Services Director can help them properly locate that. If we disagree, Development Services and the business, with the location of it, then they have the right to go to Board of Adjustment. Okay, that sort of follows what we talked about in the other one. I think that's consistent. So I guess we'll leave that one alone. We'll move on.
Where is it saying that it has to go?
To the, we're saying it has to go to the rear of the property in a manner that minimizes public view from neighboring properties and or the street.
Only in the rear.
Only in the rear.
The person that spoke to Dave from Perks,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I got one on the
theirs are on the
side.
side. They've been on the side for a long time.
Behind a 6-foot fence.
This is the school, Apache Trail High School's got 20-footer on the side.
So do we want to say rear or side? And if it's visible again, they have to screen.
Right.
Okay.
And when you say structural, can you explain that one to me, please?
Well, it's not, what I mean by that is it's not a landscaping screen that it is. It could be a fence. It could be Councilman X idea. It could be a...
But would they have to go through engineering and hire a licensed engineer to do that?
Well, here's, and this has been a bugaboo for you, I understand. What I'm hearing from Dennis Dixon, our building official, is that he could create 1 or 2 or 3 sort of in-house standards that we can give to someone that's pre-engineered for them.
Okay.
If they want to do something other than that, you know, then they're on their own.
That would be very nice.
All right?
Yeah, I like that idea.
Yep.
Okay. Now here, minimum lot size, you know, we have very, very small, potentially small commercial lots. So do you want to choose? Do you want a minimum lot size here or not?
No.
What did you say?
I should have probably put another X that said none.
Yeah.
What is the size like Perk's business there? Is that an eighth of an acre?
No,
Some of these may not be lots, though. I mean, if you've got multiple businesses in one building and they need them out back, then there wouldn't even be a lot.
That's true.
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, you have an owner that may have 8 businesses, that lot may be big enough, but if you have a condominium, which we're seeing more of, by the way, then that makes it a little more interesting, so.
No minimum lot
Okay,
size.
all right. Maximum number per business. We saw that one slide that, you know, there was probably about 12 businesses and there's 34 containers on the property.
I would like to suggest 2.
Yeah, I would say it depends on the area where they can put it, because it's going to be depending on that. You wouldn't want to cram in 2 in a small one, but if you had a larger area, 2 could very well fit in easily.
For instance, Walmart at Christmas time would need more than 2.
It's true.
Excuse me, Walmart has got an existing development agreement that prohibits them.
Prohibits
When
them?
we get our new super Target.
Yet they use them every day.
Well, in the back of Signal Butte, there's quite a few of them.
Green.
Yes.
They're at Walmart.
They can't have them.
Those aren't storage containers, though. They're semi-trailers.
Yeah, the removable ones, yeah.
They're on wheels.
Mhm.
So those don't even apply here.
No.
Okay.
And there's always something more behind this, because if you don't limit the number per business, and the business is also in the business now of storing other people's equipment, and it becomes a storage facility, then you've gone beyond the intent of what it is. The other thing is, it goes, I guess it's assumed here that wherever they put this, it can't disrupt traffic, parking, and access for fire vehicles and so forth, okay? Yeah. So that would be case by case?
Yes.
Okay. Do you want a maximum length?
A lot of those come in as temporary things, like Councilman Surtee had said. Some of them may be 55 feet. That's a hard one for the businesses.
Okay, so none here.
Yes.
Width 10 feet as per the other one that we talked about? Okay. We're getting there. Height 8'6" as we did with the other ones? Let me do this. Let me check and see what the other companies have. If the other companies are at 9 feet, we don't want to exclude them.
Well, I'm just thinking again for businesses, they get different ones. They come and go from time to time.
Yeah.
It would be a bummer if they had an 8'6" one for a long time, and then they bring in one that happens to be 9.
Yeah, we're not going to quibble over, 4 or 6 inches. Let us just confirm what the typical cargo container, as we come to know and love them, are, and we'll slide that in there.
Right.
Duration, temporary versus permanent. Again, we're looking at both. That's what I believe you're getting to.
Both, yeah,
All right.
because there's some businesses that use them, and there's some businesses that are ongoing turnover.
All right. Same standard for the type of container as we're doing with residential?
Right.
Yes? Okay.
I would agree with the same.
All right.
We don't have any businesses here in town that use railroad cars. You know, in Mesa, they've got the railroad tracks coming through there, and you'll see a lot of railroad cars that are stored. But I don't think that happens here.
Well, I just recall in a former life, someone actually bought a railroad car and stuck it in their back residential yard as an amenity almost, That could pop up. Who knows? We certainly aren't thinking about every possibility. Next year we'll be back because someone has a brainstorm that we haven't thought of. But all right, Mr. City Attorney, gives us direction.
Actually, there's one more issue. Enforcement. Who do you want this to apply to? Back in 1989, I think it was, Ordinance 630 was passed, and it said in 3 of them, or 2 of them, I forget how many, you can help me out, Mr. Stanky. I think it's 3 in the city that are allowed without any regulations whatsoever.
If those were before the ordinance were passed, then we don't have any say in that.
Well,
it was those 3.
No, that's not true. You do, because this is not a zoning case. There's not grandfathered rights. This is a city code Chapter 1 matter, not a zoning ordinance. Zoning ordinance comes under a different chapter and a different volume.
I would like to try to work with those three that have been here forever to see if they would voluntarily bring them up to these standards.
You can ask them, but they would not have to under the law, because I don't think you should, I think you should leave them alone. My recommendation is that this be enforced against anybody who has them. Even though I know in August you didn't want other people bringing them in, I think we talked about this last night. There were some motions that were made throughout the months. There's like 3 or 4 motions. Some of them were very confusing. Staff was confused. So I think if you're going to pass this, it should apply to everybody, and anybody who wants to bring them in the future.
Councilman Sears?
Yeah, I think there was a confusion in what we requested. Back in August, when I requested that these people that are almost ready to be prosecuted, that we wait until we resolve this issue. I didn't think that we were going to be actively looking for other people that are in violation until this issue was resolved. And for several people to be issued citations in the last 2 weeks, I don't understand why that happened. We're in the middle of working a process.
I don't think anybody was issued a citation whatsoever.
All these people that are here.
No one's been issued a citation.
Okay, they were issued the letter that they must remove them within 14 days or they will be fined.
Yes.
I didn't think we were going to do that while we were in the middle of these discussions.
The council directed us to do that at the last meeting.
See, there's where the confusion is. So my recommendation is, and for enforcement purposes, for legal purposes, I'd have a prosecutor here tonight if you want to ask her about discriminatory prosecution.
Absolutely. I mean, is it right that we tell somebody yesterday that they must remove this today, or 2 weeks ago, they must remove it today, when possibly in 2 weeks it will be allowed? That, to me, I'm sorry, it doesn't make sense.
Mr. Mayor, can Mary Ann Coyne, prosecutor, come up and briefly talk about that?
If Mayor, council members, if I understand the issue, I think that if we were to prosecute, it's my understanding that you had exempted some people before a certain period of time from prosecution until this issue was resolved, and then gave direction to go ahead and pursue potential prosecution of others who were discovered after a certain date. I think we would run into some real issues on selective prosecution. I also think that one thing you have to understand is that the city would have the burden of proof on any prosecution. And the people, there was, to my understanding, some issue that if someone had this before a certain date, they would be exempt, and if someone was not in that category of the people who had it before a certain date, they would not be exempt. But the city has the burden of proof. Those people would not have to bring in anything to show us when they had them. It would be our burden of proof, and I think you run into burden of proof issues, and you run into some real potential selective enforcement issues. And I mean, my feeling is it should be straight across the board, however you decide to do that.
And Mr. Mayor, it's also anticipated that if an ordinance comes back, it would actually go in Chapter 9. And so under Chapter 9, those are civil violations for the first 3 within 24 months. And then after that, the 4th violation within 24 months would be a crime. Just like weeds, abandoned vehicles. That's what I had recommended the first time around. And if you don't want to do that, we can just, if people don't want to comply, then they're going to be prosecuted for a crime. It's up to you on how you want to do that. I don't recommend that. I recommend doing it as the other property maintenance code matters are handled.
Yes. I think where the confusion came in is we didn't want any more containers coming into our city until this issue was resolved. I don't think that we directed staff to go out and look for more and cite them or send them a notice. It was, we don't want any more coming in these next 2 weeks. We want to resolve this issue. I think that's where we were going with that. I mean, please correct me if I'm wrong.
I'm not sure that was clear in one of the motions. I'm not sure it was clear. Brad can tell you why he pursued that way.
Let me explain that. Development Services, up until that last meeting, we had been exempting everybody, people that were in the prior list in August and people that had them pop up after August. We had a staff discussion, and there was some debate on staff whether or not that was your direction originally. So we came back here, and the message that I think we all agreed we heard, because the semi-trailer issue popped up.
Right. That was a new one that had just been brought in.
Go after and enforce the semi-trailer, and for all of those properties that have popped up with cargo containers, they are not to be on the exempt list, and we are to enforce those. And that's what we've been doing over the last 2 weeks. What we did was we sent out, hopefully consistently, a letter to those, and we may not haven't gotten to all of them, that they have 14 days to comply. If they don't, we hand them over to the legal, and legal decides the timetable on prosecution at that point. If we misread you on that, it's very important to know that.
I think we did say something. I remember some
said exactly
discussion
that.
about that. This whole thing.
I'll agree with Joel, though. I thought we were actually saying we didn't want any additional ones brought in.
What I heard.
And that's what I thought we were.
The original.
I'm going to say there was confusion then back on our part as well.
The original request, I believe, came from George when he said, so what you're saying is until this is resolved, we're going to look for other things to enforce. And I consider this not resolved yet, so I didn't think that we were looking to enforce these issues until this is resolved. And when this was brought up at the last meeting, it was about this new 45-foot trailer that had just been dropped right on Broadway, and we didn't want anybody else bringing in more right now. Let's resolve this issue.
I think the original motion was focus our efforts on other things.
Right.
Which was your motion.
Right, and
Yes.
I thought we were still focusing our efforts on other items, not cargo containers, until we resolve this issue. So what I would like to request tonight is that anybody else over the last 2 weeks who has been listed here, that we not enforce this on anybody until we resolve this issue. Because I can't see, like the gentleman from Perks, it's going to cost him $2,000 to remove these tomorrow, and possibly 2 weeks, another $2,000 to bring them back.
Well, one problem is if you do exempt, if you want to go that way, well, I don't really want to get into a legal issue, but someone might say, well, I have a claim against the city because you made me move it, and I really didn't have to move it because now you changed the law.
Yeah, but has anybody moved them yet?
I think one, Mr.
John?
Actually, we can't really ask him because we're not in that type of
Okay, I
meeting.
think that the only person who has removed them is John Kantowski.
While it's under discussion, I think it's only right to put a halt on prosecution.
Your Honor.
We're still discussing this item. So until this is resolved, I don't see how we can go out and, pursue prosecution. And what if it passes?
The motion from the last meeting that was approved is Councilmember Severs moved that the following direction be given to staff regarding the use of cargo containers citywide, that the suggestions from Brad and the council tonight, keeping it simple, going with earth tones, landscape screening where possible, and flexibility on structural screening be used, and that it be brought back to us at the next meeting, and that we give an extension to the original people that we have given exception to until February 19th. And the discussion before that had to do with the people that were originally accepted at the August 7th meeting.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that's what I was.
So everybody that had already received an exception, I wanted it to stay until this is resolved. But I didn't think that we were going to go out and find more. I guess I need to word it that we need to leave everybody alone until we resolve this issue. Everybody with a cargo container.
Here and into the future. Is that a proper thing to deal with tonight? Because we have these pending, folks who are concerned about all of this.
Well, you have, letters have been sent out from your department.
Right.
And the 19th would be the deadline. Well, actually, I don't know what the deadline is because I don't know when they were sent out.
The 14 days may have passed, and now they're technically in violation.
Well, what would happen is then you would send the case to my office. We would look at it from a legal standpoint on whether they could be prosecuted, and that would take some time also. How much time? Well, that depends on how many we get. That depends on the complexity of the particular case. So it's hard to say. To review a stack of long-form complaints, because that's what they probably would be, it would take Mary Ann a bit of time to do that, especially if you mix in all the other criminal matters that come from the police department.
Okay, several times in the past, code enforcement has gone out and given somebody a 14-day notice, and they've gone back and they've said, hey, we haven't had time to do it, can we get an extension? And code enforcement says, you know what, I'll give you another 14 days. They use their discretion on time every day. Can we ask code enforcement to do that today, tomorrow?
Well,
that way it doesn't have to go to your office.
I think they do have that discretion. It could depend on the excuse. If someone is sick and they can't move it, I've seen the code officers give additional time. I've seen that.
Exactly. So
do it just because they want us to do it.
Can you go on the record?
Your Honor.
Yes.
Can we extend it because the council wants us to extend it?
That could be part of the motion.
Okay.
But we need a motion for that.
It can be in the same motion.
Your Honor.
Yes.
Yes.
I move that the following direction be given to staff regarding cargo containers, that all of the options that Brad has presented to us tonight and the feedback that he received from us be written or drafted in the ordinance, and everybody having to do with these cargo containers right now not be enforced until we resolve this matter.
With the acknowledgement that if this does not pass, they would be in violation, and at one point they would have to comply with Ordinance 630.
Yes.
Okay.
I'll second it.
Moved and second. Roll call.
Councilmember Deeds?
No.
Councilmember Barker?
No.
Vice Mayor Eck?
I'll say yes on this drafting. I don't know that I'll approve it in the 19th.
Councilmember Severs?
Yes.
Councilmember Surtee?
Yes.
Councilmember Wilson?
Yes.
Mayor Zlotko?
No.
4 in favor, 3 opposed. Motion carries, Your Honor.
Thank you, Brad.
Yes.
There will be no executive session or work session on Monday, February 28th, or February 18th, 2008, due to President's Day holiday. And I move that an executive session at 6 p.m. and a work session at 6 p.m. be held on Tuesday, February 19th, 2008, in the City Council Conference Room and City Council chambers, respectively.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Roll call.
Councilmember Barker?
Yes.
Councilmember Deeds?
Yes.
Councilmember Severs?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Eck?
Yes.
Councilmember Wilson?
Yes.
Councilmember Surtee?
Yes.
Mayor Zlotko?
Yes. We're adjourned.
That's a problem.